This story begins in the beautiful Duchy of Dankand, Eisen Empire. The young lady in this place is famous for her antics, and once she doused another girl because she was wearing the same clothes. She can also easily spend all her money on all sorts of nonsense. But this time, the lady of the Marquisate of Clement, who was the crown prince's partner, was in trouble. After the imperial ball, she fell ill with an unknown illness, and everyone began to think that our villain had a hand in this. Suddenly, the maids stop gossiping and bow their heads to the Duke. An angry man bursts into Isabella's room and starts screaming. Isabella Duncand is an honored daughter of the ducal house. Without any conversation or clarification, the father hits the girl in the face. He accuses his daughter of openly deciding to speak out against the marquisate. Rumors of her deeds spread throughout the capital and completely tarnished the family's honor. Until then, the Duke had let everything go for the good of her mother. But this never brought his daughter to her senses. Moreover, she begins to get angry and believes that her father does not dare to treat her like this. At that moment, in a fit of rage, the girl hits her father with all her might on the cheek. The man did not expect such a reaction and was very perplexed. All the servants in the house witnessed this incident and were very scared. But Isabella is concerned about something completely different now, and it has nothing to do with her behavior. All this time, the father holds the bruised area and cannot even say a word. And his daughter doesn't understand why her arm started to hurt after the blow. In the land of demons, there are 9 creatures known as demon lords. Each of them has its own unique and inimitable power. Among them is the Lord of Contracts, who is the master of binding agreements and oaths. The demon king himself favors the ruler of the demonic world. It is said that she is capable of knocking down a bat in flight. However, now our heroine is experiencing bewilderment from the feeling of pain. The girl does not understand what this little man did to her and how this is possible. Isabella begins to threaten her father with death and tries to use magical powers. However, her heart is at its limit and cannot escape the demonic circle. At this moment, our heroine experiences unbearable pain in her body. She covers her mouth with her hand and cannot believe her own worthlessness. After this, drops of blood slowly begin to fall onto the floor of the room. The Duke was very afraid for his daughter and asked the servants to call a doctor. Meanwhile, Isabella cannot understand why her hands are covered in blood. After a while, the girl finds herself in bed and looks at her weak, pale little hands. She also doesn't understand where she got this thin white hair from. At this moment, one of the maids notices that the mistress is unhappy with her hairstyle. She decides to help Isabella and gathers her hair up so it doesn't get in the way. After this, a doctor approaches our heroine with an unknown instrument. The girl demands that this disgusting thing be removed and that it not be poked at her. But the doctor promises to finish the examination very quickly and asks Isabella to be patient. He then explains to the maid that, apart from a slight loss of strength, he does not observe anything serious. At that moment, the girl was very angry and tried to use magic, but someone carved a magical seal on her heart, and she was unable to deal with the rude man. This seal is so powerful that Isabella could destroy her soul if she tried to use her powers. Our heroine understands that someone very powerful could have done this to her. Lord of Subjugation Dantalion possesses the greatest power among his kind. He always looked at the demon lord with irritation and could harm her. Or maybe this is the work of the dream lord Annette, who recently lost to a girl in a card game and gave her her villa. But if it wasn't her, then perhaps it was the Lord of Lust named Belial. Even the body our heroine finds herself in is more suited to his taste. Meanwhile, the doctor reports that Isabella has no serious health problems. Jessie's maid asks to examine the girl again, as her entire dress is covered in blood. But the doctor assures that the internal injuries will heal, and that we should be more concerned about our mental health. Having become human, the girl behaved too riskily, since she was not allowed to reveal her identity. Luckily, Isabella has been acting eccentric before, and no one pays attention to her behavior. But the doctor notices the girl's strange speech and decides that the culprit is imitation of novels. Moreover, Isabella had previously suffered from various illnesses, including amnesia. The next morning in the duchy begins with an explanation to the lady about who she is. Her name is Isabella, and the girl is a noble daughter of the ducal house of Dansand. Our heroine is terribly angry that, being the Lord of Demons, she was called exactly the same. And the maid explains that the mistress's reputation in these parts is below the baseboard. Isabella is very pleased with this, as she believes that the villain must have killed hundreds of thousands of people in the past. However, the Duke's daughter has a scandalous reputation for a completely different reason. In the past, she spilled a couple of glasses of wine and slapped someone. Suddenly, the girl notices that all the servants around her are whispering about her. And Jessie explains that the lady did not become a villain on a whim. According to the doctor, when her mother was still alive, the young lady was a real angel. But after giving birth, Madame's health began to rapidly deteriorate, and she died. The girl was 5 years old at the time and looked very much like her mother, which depressed the Duke, and he avoided his daughter. Lord Gabriel is 3 years older than his sister and is not particularly close to her. At that moment, Isabella realizes that her brother has the same name as that angel guy. Her mother was very devoted to her religion, and that is why she gave her son this name. After this, the maid explains that the young lady has been in the fresh air for a long time. But suddenly, a guy approaches her, who has already heard that the girl was coughing up blood. The maid bows to the young lord, and it seems Isabella understands what kind of man he is. However, the guy starts pointing his finger at the girl and waits for her to respond. He accuses our heroine of being a malingerer and attracting attention to herself. Every day, Isabella puts on an act and pretends to be pathetic. But our heroine doesn't understand what this impudent fellow is doing and starts to get angry. The girl tried very hard to contain her anger, but this guy is crossing all boundaries. She grabs him by the lapels and tells him that he doesn't value his life at all. However, Isabella completely forgets that it is dangerous for her to use magic now. Suddenly, she feels ill again, and blood starts to spurt from her mouth. At this moment, the guy realizes that Isabella was not pretending at all. But our heroine had no plans to cough up blood again today. Meanwhile, the guy can't hide the horror from his face. And while the maid tries to somehow help her mistress, Isabella cannot believe that she has made the same mistake again. But now the young man, who had doubted the girl's illness, clearly saw her ailment. He begins to worry greatly about our heroine's health and asks where it hurts. But Isabella finds it strange that people worry even about those they don't like. The demon would never do such a thing and would only laugh at someone coughing up blood. Isabella even perked up a little, imagining the Lord in her place. Meanwhile, the guy doesn't understand the smile of the girl who doesn't pay attention to her illness. He asks her to rest and is even ready to take advantage of his position to call a priest. However, Isabella removes her hand and reports that she is not injured. After all, if people call the priest, her identity may be revealed. The guy thinks that with such a protest, the girl is just attracting attention, but she doesn't need it. She asks to just forget about her and never touch her again. These words leave the young man in shock and complete bewilderment at what is happening. After this, he explains that he should not have thought of calling a priest for such a rotten person. The guy leaves and asks not to stop him. Although Isabella had no intention of doing so, now the girl's brother has time to think everything over. He remembers his sister's condition and doesn't understand why it scared him. And Isabella thinks the guy is pathetic and decides to call him Gabby. Just think, he didn't even notice that his sister's soul had been swapped. At this moment, our heroine notices that magic is appearing on her bloody hand. Meanwhile, the doctor informs the Duke that he does not know the cause of his daughter's internal bleeding. After this news, the man smirks, as he considers it to be Isabella's trick. He doesn't know how she does it, but she plays better and better every day. However, the doctor warns that an unknown cause does not mean that the girl is faking it. But the Duke is sure that if even such a doctor could not find her, then she does not exist at all. And Vincent assures that the lady's blood was real, and that it might be necessary to ask the temple for help. But this is impossible to do, since Isabella declared herself a saint. And since then, the mere mention of her name makes the temple tremble. She's already attracted enough attention, and should be pleased with herself. After this, the Duke lets the doctor go, and thinks that his daughter is a complete disappointment. As evening approaches, the maid begins to light candles in the mansion. She lights one of them, but within seconds the fuse goes out. This seems strange to the girl, since this has happened several times already. She needs to light the candle as soon as possible and take care of the lady. But no matter how hard the maid tried, she couldn't do anything. It turns out that Isabella uses her magic specifically to be alone. After all, while the maid is trying to cope with the candle, she can think about a lot of things. Her magic now feels like a bat bite compared to how powerful she used to be. But why did she suddenly return if she had no strength at all since her rebirth? Previously, Isabella was unable to check her circle because there were many people nearby. But now she is alone, and she should take advantage of the chance. At this moment, our heroine becomes what she was when she lived in the demonic world. she sees before her a magical seal, trapping her magic and soul inside Isabella's body. And this is not an ordinary circular seal, as it is connected with a contract. This means that the contract made with the demon was confirmed. To create it, you need to have the authority of the Master of Contracts, that is, Isabella herself. After this, the parties are bound by the power of our heroine, and then the deal is considered concluded. This means that the real Isabella made a contract with a demon. Thus, the demon must fulfill the human wish. Otherwise, he will die forever. But how did our heroine end up being drawn into this contract and lost the ability to even move? Now she will have to fulfill a human wish to break the seal. All that remains is to find out what she wanted and deal with the irritation from this task. At this point, Jessie happily announces that she has finally lit all the candles. But returning to the room, she again sees that creepy smile on the lady's face. Isabella turns her head sharply towards the maid, and for a moment, she even looks frightened. However, the girl only says that she wants to see Abby and Gabby. Since her power returned immediately after meeting her brother, it is highly likely that Isabella's wish is related to her family. Our heroine already has a rough idea, and all that remains is to confirm it. All contracts with demons must be made with great care. So now Isabella demands that the maid take her to her family, and Jessie explains that at the moment, the Duke and her brother are having dinner in the dining room. But the lady's dinner was brought to her room as usual, since she only eats here. However, Isabella is not at all happy with the grass that even rabbits don't eat. So she demands that Jessie take her to the dining room immediately. Although dinner requires changing clothes, Isabella decides not to waste time on it. Who would have thought that she would so voluntarily deal with people? After all, 500 years ago, she encountered an unpleasant event. At that time, the demon lord made a contract with a knight, and after this incident, she tried to never get involved with people again. But it is very difficult for an ordinary person to live even 100 years. Therefore, there should have been no trace left of that knight within 5 centuries, and Isabella won't have to worry about suddenly meeting him. At this moment, the girl reaches the dining room and throws the door open with all her might. The Duke and his son almost choked from such surprise. Not only did Isabella appear in the dining room, but she also burst into it. After this, the men ask what exactly brought the girl here. Meanwhile, she pays attention to the meat her family eats. These impudent people only give her some grass, so Isabella demands that they give her some meat too. However, just recently, the girl went on a hunger strike, and now she bursts into the dining room in her pajamas. Suddenly, Gabby decides to stand up for her sister and demands that she give her some meat. At that very moment, he orders the chef to bring Isabella a steak of each degree of doneness. His father was even speechless from the sudden change in his son's behavior. Even Isabella doesn't understand what suddenly came over Gabby and why he took her side. And after a while, they bring her a variety of steaks that look very appetizing. Isabella immediately swings her knife to eat a piece. The blade penetrates a piece of meat and cuts it into pieces. At that moment, the girl's father and brother's eyes almost popped out of their heads. The Duke is outraged that his daughter has forgotten all her manners and eats like a savage. Apparently, she decided to attract attention to herself again and pretend to be a child. But Isabella doesn't even pay attention to her father's words. Gabby takes her side again and demands that her father stop making fun of her when she eats. This completely infuriates the Duke, since children cannot speak to him in such a tone. An argument ensues between the son and father, and Isabella realizes that the two don't get along very well. The girl doesn't know what a family is in the human world, but she certainly shouldn't look like this. It turns out that the Duke has only 2 children, and he is on bad terms with both of them. Demons born from hellfire have no biological parents, but at the same time, they have a creation that they consider their father. Isabella has only the vaguest memories of her last moments with the demon god. He was the one who taught her to do anything to achieve what she wanted, so she asked him to just give in and let himself be sealed. Now she remembers that her parenting has been a complete failure, and she says it out loud. The Duke immediately turns his attention to his daughter and does not understand what she means. The man decides to ask again, so that Isabella repeats her words again. At this point, the girl responds that her father's parenting was a complete failure. These words shock the Duke, and he even loses the power of speech. Words about how he failed everything start repeating in his head. He considers Isabella's behavior to be beyond all bounds. But Gabby asks her father to finally stop yelling and being indignant. After all, Isabella is indeed right, and the Duke never devoted his time to his children. At this moment, the man realizes that he has nothing to say in response to this. He falls into despair, and the servants try to somehow console the Lord. But Gabby is more interested in knowing since when Isabella has been eating meat. Previously, she always refused high-calorie foods. Now our heroine understands why they brought her grass for dinner. And in front of everyone in this dining room, she announces that she simply doesn't watch her figure anymore. The girl doesn't know when she will be able to return to the demon world again, so she plans to eat as long as she can. After these words, Gabby seriously begins to worry about her sister's health. He thinks that her condition is so dire that she does not have long to live. In connection with this, the guy orders to stock up on a large amount of meat in the kitchen. When Isabella first met his brother, he seemed arrogant, and now he says and does things that are very worthy of her. All this time, Gabby is worried about the fact that his sister has become very ill, and if it ever comes to killing him, she will be ready to spare him. But before that, she plans to deal with this mess of servants. Isabella plans to show them what happens when she is ignored. Taking a sharp knife from the table, she abruptly throws it at the wall and hits the servant's cheek. The wound on his face begins to bleed, and a strong fear appears in his eyes. But even her father and brother did not expect such a trick from Isabella. Meanwhile, the girl silently gets up from her chair and heads towards the servant. She pulls out a knife, which is firmly embedded in the wall near the man's head. Isabella explains that she is going to teach these impudent fellows some manners. There are only 3 ducal families in the Asian Empire, and the Danken house is one of them. He is the only one who has no pedigree and is revered as a hero. 500 years ago, one of the 5 heroes sealed the demon god and ascended to the royal throne, and the rest of the heroes were awarded high titles. But after so much time, not a drop of heroic blood remained in their descendants. In high society, there is a rule to never look down on the Danken house. But Gabby doesn't understand what's so special about these ancestors. Although, if you think about it, the Dankens are actually much more impressive, and she earned the ducal title solely by her merits. And Gabby continues to carry their name, becoming an excellent swordmaster. Even his father is an excellent swordsman, though a lousy parent. But every family has a dirty spot, and this one is no exception. So, at one of the balls, Isabella poured a glass of wine on a lady's dress. She did this only because she had the same outfit as her. Everyone was shocked after her antics with the daughter of the Count's family. Isabella is so stupid that she is only capable of throwing tantrums. That's exactly how Gabby used to think of her. But now something has changed. This time, his sister put a knife to the servants' throats, showing them her place. If this continues, her father will simply throw her out of the house. So Gabby decides to stop her sister and talk some sense into her. He asks the girl to put down her knife and apologize to the servants. However, Isabella does not understand why she would suddenly apologize, because then this waiter will never be able to learn manners. He will become arrogant and think that he can hurt her, because Gabby took his side. After this, Isabella screams and asks if she is worthy of respect, but Gabby is already too shocked to respond. Isabella is indeed right, and no aristocrat will apologize to a commoner. And given the girl's reputation, the Duke's servants will always secretly mock her. Gabby used to think that Isabella was just waiting to be thrown out of the family. She always interfered with her brother's bright future and brought shame on their home. And yet, no matter how much her reputation suffered, she was of the Danken family. If he had been on his sister's side all this time, everything would have turned out differently. This whole situation plunges the young Duke into deep thought. Meanwhile, Isabella holds a knife to the servant's throat and does not understand why her brother is silent. At this point, the Duke announces that his daughter is right and everyone should respect her. So he asks what punishment she wants to inflict on those who mocked her. With a hint of pleasure on her face, the girl says that she would like to cut off their heads with this knife. But Gabby is outraged by her idea and explains that she still can't do it with a butter knife. At this time, the Duke does not understand when his children managed to grow up like this. If his wife were still alive, everything would have turned out differently. He is certainly not the best father, but he always raised them in abundance. The Duke explains that the joke has gone too far and that aristocrats cannot simply take the lives of commoners. But those who dared to mock his daughter will never work here again. At this point, the man decides to finish his dinner and says that he is very tired. And Isabella wants to finish her meat and asks the waiters to bring more wine. Now she can calmly enjoy a delicious dinner. After this, the girl goes into the room and falls into bed. As she thought, after dinner with her family, her strength increased slightly. This only happened twice, and Gabby was there the whole time. If only the real Isabella had a diary, our heroine would be able to understand what she was thinking. But now she doesn't know anything, and decides to just sleep peacefully. Suddenly, the girl finds herself at a ball where many aristocrats have gathered. People are having fun and dancing, enjoying the evening. Given their outfits, Isabella thinks they are performing mating rituals. But just a second ago, she was in her bed and about to sleep. Suddenly, everyone turns their attention to Isabella and starts making fun of her. This really hurts the girl and makes her feel like a laughingstock. At this moment, our heroine's body begins to move on its own, and the girls continue to discuss Isabella among themselves in an unflattering light. The lady has no one to accompany her, which means that even her family hates her. It's probably because she killed her mother during childbirth. And after saying that Isabella should never have been born, she pours a glass of wine on the impudent girl's dress. Since Isabella had no one to protect her, she decided to act on her own. The Count's daughter did not expect such a stunt and was very shocked by the ruined outfit. All the wine that was in Isabella's glass ended up on her dress. After this, the girl asks the impudent girl to repeat to her face what she said. Once again, the lady of the Dankin house put on a show and proved that she was crazy. All she could say at that moment was that the Count's daughter had the same dress as her. Although Gabby was at the event, he did not react to his sister's actions. At this moment, all the aristocrats begin to whisper behind the lady's back. It is obvious to everyone that even the young lord ignores Isabella, and that she will soon be kicked out of the family altogether. After this, she had to leave the ball silently and in great disgrace. In great despair, Isabella wandered through the empty corridors of the huge house. She wanted someone to be there and support her. At that moment, in her reflection in the mirror, she met the demon Isabella. Suddenly, our heroine opens her eyes, awakening from a deep sleep. It's already morning, and Isabella is deep in thought after what she saw. She starts to get angry at the actions of this stupid brat. After all, if this stupid girl can't handle the matter, then there's no need to start it. This whole dream was terribly unpleasant, and Isabella begins to cross herself, as is customary among demons. At this moment, Jessie appears in the room and is surprised that the lady is crossing herself backwards. In the human world, this is considered blasphemy before the creator of the heavenly realm. So Isabella replies that everything is fine and God likes it. Jessie is very shocked by these words and thinks that the lady has really gone crazy. After all, blasphemy for a mere mortal threatens immediate execution at the stake. But how could burning be a punishment if in her home, she and Lilith often enjoyed baths in sulfur flames? They were so warm and happy that Isabella smiles at the memory. Afterwards, Jessie offers the lady breakfast, who only wants meat, but she warns that eating meat first thing in the morning can cause indigestion. However, our heroine is not intimidated by this and is ready to begin her meal. But before Isabella can even bring the meat to her mouth, a newspaper is brought to her. She doesn't usually read them, but today's issue is about the Crown Prince. The thing is that the former Isabella really liked this young man, and his photo is right on the front page of the newspaper. After carefully examining his appearance, Isabella thinks that he is quite handsome, but she doesn't understand why everyone thinks she likes an ordinary person so much. At this point, Jessie is ready to sink into the ground, since such words are treason. And Isabella explains that in any case, she doesn't like this man anymore, and she doesn't need the newspapers. After this, Jessie begins to think that the lady likes someone else. To this, she replies that she is only attracted to people with a pure white soul. But the maid believes that this is a book that cannot be judged by its cover. Now, Isabella remembered the man who, for the first time in her life, had the soul she craved. And to get it, she made a contract with people for the first time. But in the end, nothing good came out of it for our heroine. Now her heart hurts, as if it had been pierced by a sharp sword. Isabella decides to forget what happened in the past and finish reading the newspaper. The Asian Empire used to be a kingdom, and out of all the many countries, the girl lives here. And the article about the Crown Prince is devoted to diplomacy, although it would be better to simply sweep everything away by force. The young man who showed up at the event is Adrian Martin. Hearing this name, Isabella experiences shock, and a strong wind forms in the room. The thing is that our heroine is very familiar with this name. The pain she would rather forget appears again in her eyes. After all, Martin Zachary was her first contractor 500 years ago. His blue eyes and blonde hair made him look like a real angel. But Martin betrayed the demon Isabella and pierced her with a sword. All this means that Adrian is a descendant of that man. Isabella experiences intense horror at the realization of what is happening. In a rage, she crumples the newspaper with the image of the Empire's crown prince. Jessie is deeply shocked by the lady's behavior, which can also be considered treason. But Isabella only asks the maid to get rid of this ball of paper. After this, the girl decides not to live by the events of 500 years ago. Now the most important thing for her is to use her body and fulfill Isabella's desire. This is what our heroine thought until she received an invitation from the imperial palace. Isabella was ready for anything, but not for a meeting with the crown prince. Although the girl had a bad reputation, her father still tried to ensure that she received an invitation to the ball. Despite the lady's amnesia, Jessie explains that she cannot ignore an invitation from the imperial family. For a while, our heroine must live like Isabella, and therefore she should not stand out. Last night in her dream, she saw the daughter of a simple count openly insulting her. But to not respect the duke's daughter so publicly, you need to have a good patron. To sort things out, Isabella agrees to go to the ball, and Jessie begins to panic. After all, now she is faced with the task of preparing the lady for the event in a short period of time. Isabella had already worn all the dresses in her wardrobe, and if she showed up at the ball in one of them, everyone would start gossiping. And because the lady has done a lot of bad things, she is no longer given money. Now the most powerful and richest figure in the demon world can't even afford a pair of shoes. It turns out that Isabella is completely poor, and her affairs are very bad. At this point, the girl declares that in this case, she is going to get rich. And there is only one way, which is to rob other people's wealth. After some time, Isabella gets into a carriage and goes somewhere. However, Jessie tries to dissuade the lady from the dubious trip. Although the girl was forbidden to leave the house, no one stopped her. All the servants were disciplined as they should be. None of the guards even dared to touch the lady after the attack on the waiter. Meanwhile, Jessie is trying to figure out where they are going. However, Isabella does not answer and only silently exits the carriage upon arrival. Once on the street, the maid experiences rather unpleasant feelings. After all, they arrive together with the lady to some incomprehensible slums. At this point, Isabella announces that she will go on alone. However, Jessie will be in big trouble if she leaves the lady alone. But it would be better for our heroine to go further alone. As a result, they, together with the maid, find themselves inside a building where vagrants live. Isabella explains that you need to rob those who won't cause problems. In extreme shock, Jessie starts screaming that the lady is going to steal in the slums. Isabella shuts the girl up and explains that otherwise, they won't get rich even in a month. Besides, our heroine already knows the ideal target for robbery. At this moment, the girl shifts her gaze and persistently searches for something. Then she takes out a fork and, taking aim, throws it sharply to the side. The device is firmly inserted into the wooden wall and catches a small mouse by the tail. At that very second, Isabella takes the animal in her arms and holds it tightly. After this, the mouse girl demands to be taken to her master. The mouse obeys the order under threat of death and leads Isabella along. Having completed its journey, the animal jumps into a hole located in the gate, and the maid is interested in how Isabella even found out about this place. But the girl does not reveal all her secrets and kicks down the door. Now the way is open, and our heroine goes inside the room. There, she attracts the attention of many men relaxing at the tables, and Isabella silently walks further and approaches the bartender with scars on his face. The man immediately understands that this girl does not live in the slums. To this, Isabella replies that she doesn't need anything from a rat like him, and she is here only to meet the master. Isabella demands to be taken to him, and this conversation attracts all the visitors. After this, the bartender asks to follow him, as the master is in the basement. The girl follows the man and asks Jessie to stay put. The maid is very worried and asks the lady to come back quickly. The stairs to the basement turn out to be quite long, as the master was always careful. After this, the bartender stops near the door and invites the girl to come inside. And Isabella warns that during the conversation, no one should dare touch the girl she came with. And if anyone dares to touch her, he will suffer a painful death. The girl's threat seems so convincing that it seriously frightens the bartender. After this, Isabella asks him to get lost and goes ahead. The girl approaches the door and prepares to meet the master. Sir, the Rat King, is a demon whose power is so weak that he is placed at the bottom of the hierarchy. But he is too proud to serve demons and decided to rule people and rats. He controls these animals with magic, working as an informant. 100 years had passed since Isabella had last seen him, and then she opens the door and sees a man standing with his back to her. Isabella reports that she thought the angels had already found him and torn him to pieces. At this point, Sir recognizes a strikingly frank style of speech, As he thought, in front of him was indeed Lady Bella from the demon world. Now the man is interested in what brought her to the human world in the body of Isabella Dancand. To this the girl replies that something happened to her, and that is why she came to him. Sir is very curious to know the whole backstory and how the demon ended up in a human body. However, he also notices that the girl's strength is negligible. He gets the feeling that Isabella's magic has been sealed. But after these words, our heroine asks the demon to watch his language. However, he was indeed right, and most of her power was sealed. At this moment, Sir's gaze becomes very frightened. Isabella raises her hand and grabs the demon's face with it. After that, she throws his head on the table without any further ado. Isabella sticks a knife next to his face and scares the demon badly. The girl then explains that even with that amount of magic, she can grind Sir into dust. At this moment, the demon examines the knife and realizes that it is a kitchen knife. The man is surprised that Bella wants to kill him with an ordinary device. But masters do not choose their instruments, and Sir turns everything into a joke. Besides, Bella is under the protection of the demon lord, and he would not dare to get into trouble for himself. If someone had harmed the girl, Lilith would not have let it go unpunished. After this, the situation becomes more peaceful, and Sir prepares tea. He is very surprised that no one noticed the demon in the human body. Even the people of House Dancand saw no difference in the behavior of the Duke's daughter. The owner of the body was such a thorn that people took any of Bella's antics as normal. Sir agreed that the young lady had a penchant for trouble. There were rumors that Isabella was involved with demon worshippers. They operate secretly, and there are no rumors about them other than that. The demon worshippers betrayed their kind 500 years ago and sided with the demons. But most of the dark world despise them, considering them traitors who are only interested in their own desires. To gain the favor of demons, these people killed children. Isabella still cannot forget the horrors she saw in their lair. Although they are followers of demons, they can still only be compared to cockroaches. But be that as it may, it seems Isabella used the admirers to create a summoning circle. Now one of our heroine's questions is closed, and she understands how the girl was able to do it. After this, she asks Sarah to contact the demon world. He has a magic ball on his desk that can be used to do this. Sir uses his power to communicate, but it doesn't work. Then, Isabella suggests that he use the gate for this. It is a semi-permanent portal that connects the demon world and the middle world. However, Sir reports that the gates have been closed for some time, and blocking all connections with demons means that someone is preventing it. It could be the work of whoever sealed Bella away, so they wouldn't lose the deal. According to the terms of the agreement, Isabella's soul was probably taken away. But sealing a high-ranking demon like our heroine is far more valuable than a human soul. And since Bella doesn't know the terms of the contract, someone wants her to stay in this body for a long time. Saru finds it very strange what happened to the girl. After all, she is a contract lord and could not have not known about this deal. But 500 years ago, after a betrayal, Bella lost most of her power. And in exchange for part of her power, she received magical powers from the lords. And the lords were given the ability to freely create one contractor each. That's why, when Bella first woke up, she suspected them first. Sarah was very amused by the idea that someone could use the contract's power without Bella's permission. But the girl also threateningly promises to tell him how she will have to kill him to keep the secret. Sir promises not to reveal her secret, and Bella suddenly remembers something. All this time, she was so busy that she forgot to worry about Kamangi. This is her pet, which is a demonic beast. But Sir suggests simply hoping that the other demons don't get eaten by him. However, Bella hopes to bring this beast to the middle world. And despite the fact that the gates and connection to the demon world are closed, Sir is obliged to deal with this. During these conversations, the girl almost forgot why she came. So she smiles sweetly and demands that Sarah give her all his money. After some time, Jessie finally waits for the lady from the basement. Isabella returns with the spoils and shows the maid a bag containing 100 gold coins. But Jessie still hopes that her mistress didn't actually rob anyone. However, Isabella took everything from Sir and warned that she would visit him again. After this, our heroine sees that most of the people here are Sarah's subordinates. In that case, she should maintain at least some authority of the master. So Isabella explains that she sold him a couple of the Dankin family's secrets. For example, that Gabby sucks her thumb when she sleeps, although this is a lie. But Jessie is outraged that anyone would pay for such information. And yet she did not expect that the young Duke had such a habit. And Isabella announces that it is now time for them to head to their next destination. After all, someone like her shouldn't have to settle for just 100 gold coins. She promises Jesse that she will multiply this money 20-fold, and the girl's next stop will be a casino where they can win. However, the maid hoped that the lady was able to earn money honestly. She promises that if Isabella enters the gambling hall, she will tell the Duke everything. But our heroine is not afraid of this, and the girl suggests doing it right now. The thing is that the Duke hates gambling and may banish his daughter forever after such an activity. At this point, Isabella begins to worry about something completely different. She asks Jesse to be quiet and informs him that these runts have finally gotten to them. Suddenly, several guys stand in the girl's way and ask what they are doing in such a squalid place. Here you need to behave quietly and not show off such a large bag. Jesse feels very scared and asks what they will do now. To begin with, Isabella plans to push away the noisy maid and defeat the robbers. And after that, she will be able to calmly take all their money. The girl really likes her plan and she plans to stop there. At this moment, one of the robbers begins to approach his victims. He promises that if they give everything up nicely, he will consider sparing their lives. And Isabella is just waiting for the moment when the robber comes closer. She hid a kitchen knife behind her back, with which she could deal with her offenders. But suddenly, an unknown man appears between the girl and the bandit. His head is covered by a hood, and his gaze is quickly directed at the robbers. The man takes out his powerful sword and defeats his opponent in an instant. The robber receives a strong blow and quickly falls to the ground. After this, he deals with another bandit and hits him on the back with the hilt of his sword. All opponents are defeated on the ground, and the man puts away his weapon. In a matter of minutes, he dealt with everyone who threatened the girls. Isabella carefully assesses the man and realizes that he is strong. But if he suddenly attacks her, she will try to stab him with a knife. And at this moment, Jesse feels delight and thanks the knight. The maid bows to the man in gratitude for his feat. After that, she asks the young lady to say thank you too. But how can she thank him if now she won't be able to pick the pockets of criminals? Suddenly, the knight informs Isabella that it is not safe here, and it is time for them to leave. At this moment, our heroine begins to feel his pure energy, and the knight turns around and tells the girls that he is already leaving. However, Isabella will no longer be able to simply let this man go. She rips off his hood and sees before her a blue-eyed young man with white hair. His appearance seems to her surprisingly similar to the man from the past. Zachary, who betrayed her 500 years ago, looked exactly the same. But at this moment, the knight puts his hood back on. After this, he silently turns around and leaves the girls alone. Jesse explains that the young lady cannot be so rude to her savior, and Isabella explains that she gets angry every time she sees silver hair. She once considered them the most beautiful in the world, but now even the memory of them evokes disgust. After this, Isabella says that she has lost all her passion and wants to return to the estate. After some time, the Duke silently studies the papers in his office. Isabella doesn't understand why her father called her if he's just ignoring her. Out of boredom, she begins to yawn and finds this man unpleasant. But suddenly, the girl looks away and sees an interesting pendant. For some reason, this particular jewel seems very familiar to her. At this point, her father reveals that this memorable necklace of her mother's was almost lost due to her prank. Isabella doesn't see this as a problem, as he's fine at the moment, and the Duke is unhappy that the girl left the estate today. However, now he called her to discuss something completely different. Isabella received an invitation to the ball, thanks to the generosity of the Marquis Clement. It is obvious that this is the family that Isabella tried to poison. Therefore, the Duke asks his daughter to apologize to the Marquise after the ball. But our heroine is not sure whether Isabella was initially guilty. Having entered this body, the girl first assessed her surroundings, which consisted of one maid. However, Jesse was gone for a long time, and Isabella could not get money for poison. At this point, the father announces that the lady must also hand over the documents for the diamond mine. This news provokes Isabella, and she is ready to apologize right now. The girl promises the Duke that she will definitely sort everything out. After that, she walks down the corridor and can't stop thinking about the diamond mine. These stones exist only in the middle world, and there is a whole mine of them here. That's why Isabella is fired up with the idea of getting this mine for herself. The Duke is convinced that his daughter tried to poison the Marquise's daughter, so he gives up the mine as a settlement, although Isabella is hardly to blame. In this case, the best option would be to prove her innocence and terminate the agreement. The girl will tell the Duke that she paid with the mine, and she will appropriate it for herself through an agreement. Now, all that remains is to figure out how to prove Isabella's innocence. And Isabella already has a suitable option for this idea. At this time, Sir feels a strong cold in his office. This usually happens when someone wants to make it work. But it is impossible for something that happened yesterday to happen again. Because the only one who can use Sarah is Isabella. Suddenly, a girl bursts into his office and says that she has a job for the demon. The man clutches his head and realizes that he cannot refuse. After this, Isabella explains to him the details that Sarah needs to know about the Marquise's family. The demon understands that the girl believes that someone else is to blame for the poisoning. But one way or another, everyone is sure that it was Isabella who added the poison. Although no one thinks that the girl has neither the resources nor the abilities for this. At this point, Sir takes out a book and offers to familiarize himself with Isabella's reputation. The Dankin house produces talents from generation to generation, but the girl has none of them. However, Isabella would not say so, judging by the Duke's son Gabriel. He really doesn't have an exceptional mind, but he became the youngest swordmaster. They say he controls his aura so skillfully that he uses it as a toothpick. Isabella realizes that this is the same aura that only manifests in certain people. After the Duchess's death, Isabella's relationship with her family deteriorated. After all, her health began to deteriorate just after the birth of her daughter. However, Bella is convinced that the Duke is solely to blame for this, as he wanted to continue the family line. Sir has lived in the human world for too long, and it is difficult for him to get used to the demon's way of speaking. But since public opinion can only be changed by evidence, that is precisely what the demon needs to do. He must find reliable information before midnight on the day of the imperial ball. However, this event will take place the day after tomorrow, and if Sir fails, Isabella will meet him with a kitchen knife. The demon has no way out and will have to do everything to push himself to the limit. At the same time, Sir is engaged in the sale and purchase of information and would like to receive payment for his services. Isabella is surprised that the demon even dares to mention money, so she replies that the payment will be his own life. There is one option, though, if Sir plans to return to the demon world. Bella can talk to Lilith and find a suitable position for him. But the demon is more comfortable staying in the human world and does not want to return. However, Bella explains that the human world will soon be destroyed. She feels that the seal on the demon god is getting weaker. The most she can endure is 100 years, and then the demon god will want to destroy the human world. In this case, Sir decides to actually return to the demon world and thanks the girl for the information. She only said this because she couldn't bear to see her dear little rat die. In any case, Sir promises that he will complete the investigation on time, and Isabella asks him to remember that the more compelling the evidence, the better. After this, the girl returns to the walls of her estate. The day was very eventful, and she quickly fell asleep in her bed. At this moment, she dreams that the Marquis's daughter informs her of a forced engagement. Isabella tries to reason with the girl and make her not be afraid of her older brother's strictness. After all, if she wants to change her life, then sometimes she will have to take risks. Isabella knows this firsthand, as she herself had to make the effort. Each time she tried to awaken in herself the talents that were so expected of her. That's why Nadia Clement must be ready for anything, especially when she has nothing. At this point, Isabella's dream ends and bright morning arrives. The girl sits up in her bed and feels a decline in mood. She didn't think that these dreams were much more dangerous than one might suppose. Even after waking up, the emotions remain, as if the girl had been Isabella Dansand all her life. Our heroine decides to pull herself together and not feel sorry for people. However, thanks to the dream, she realized that Isabella and the Marquis's daughter were close and not at all hostile. It also became clear that the owner of her body could not bear the situation she found herself in. She was born into a noble family, but had no abilities. At this moment, Jessie enters the room and interrupts the girl's thoughts. She brought breakfast for the lady and decorated the table with healthy food. But Isabella is furious that the maid did not bring her any meat, and Jessie explains that it has to do with the imperial ball that will take place tomorrow evening. To ensure a dress fits well, it is important for a lady to stick to a diet. And no matter how much Isabella screams, Jessie is not going to follow her lead. After all, she is ready to do everything to ensure that the lady shines brighter than anyone else at this ball. Jessie says she will prepare a massage, baths, and brush her hair for the lady. Although Isabella is not happy about this, the maid asks her to trust her. She takes her mistress's hand and promises to prepare her for the main event. But Isabella has this ominous feeling inside, like a lot of trouble is coming. Since early morning, the girl has already taken 2 baths and several massages. Jessie explains that ladies should be prepared for the ball as if it were a battlefield. Words will be used as weapons, deciding the outcome of the battle. And the reward will be an improvement in Isabella's reputation and interest from gentlemen. After all, one day a young lady will have to get married, and at a ball she can meet a suitable partner. But Isabella will do everything possible to avoid attracting attention. After this, Jessie explains that they won't have time to buy a new dress and will have to go in what they have. But she will style the lady's hair beautifully and let her choose the jewelry. Although Isabella is not particularly interested in clothes, she certainly knows her stuff when it comes to jewelry. But despite the Duke having diamond mines, Isabella's jewelry turns out to be very modest. The girl is even surprised that the real owner of her body was called a luxury-addicted villain. The contents of the box do not at all correspond to the rumors about the Duke's daughter. After this, Isabella thinks and realizes that something is wrong here. By the beginning of the evening, Gabriel is already waiting for his sister at the entrance to the house. Time is running out, and Isabella doesn't even think about showing up. Suddenly, the girl finally comes down to the carriage in her ball gown. For this, she chose a bright red dress and used fur. But instead of compliments, the girl heard only her brother's sighs. Gabby wonders what Isabella was doing that took so long. The girl explains that Jessie tried very hard to dress her up. And Gabriel just jokes and says that even so, Isabella remains herself. But the girl decided not to give in to provocations today and decides to praise her brother. She feigns genuine astonishment and screams loudly. The girl then says that Gabby looks very beautiful today. The young man experiences strange feelings and asks not to say strange things. But Isabella continues to praise his outfit and unsurpassed beauty. After some time, the girl and her brother go to the ball in their carriage. However, our heroine does not understand why she should go with Gabby, and her brother explains that with such a character and an ugly face, his sister must at least have a kind soul. After these words, Isabella can barely restrain herself from breaking down. But she continues to not give up and says that Gabby has a sweet face, but a prickly heart. At this moment, the young man becomes embarrassed and thinks that his sister has gone crazy. Isabella is very surprised, as Belial said that people like such compliments, and Gabby explains that his sister should work on her manner of speech. It's one thing at home, but at a ball, you should be polite to everyone. After all, the royal family will be there, and the girl's tone sounds very rude. Bella used to speak politely to Lilith and other monarchs. People do have strange rules, but you can treat those below you however you want. After this, Isabella decides to find out who will be higher in status than her at this ball so that she can address them politely. After all, insulting the royal dynasty can lead to imprisonment. After some time, Isabella and Gabby finally find themselves at the ball. This time, they come to the event together and walk one after another. Isabella's appearance does not go unnoticed among the aristocrats. And to our heroine, they all resemble pompous peacocks. Apparently, this is a great place to breed. Just like in her dreams, the girl hasn't eaten properly all day and decides to take some food. All this time, Gabby has been following her trail, and this is making Isabella extremely nervous. She believes that her brother is worried about her, and he is trying his best to refute this. After all, if his sister does something wrong, the ducal family will have to clean it up. But Isabella assures that there is no need to worry, as today she has decided to lose. Jessie said that the ball was a battlefield, and the girl did not intend to take part in it. However, Gabby understands that it is not even he who is cleaning up his sister's troubles, but their father. Therefore, he suggests that the girl hit anyone who starts arguing with her. But Isabella understands that at this rate, Gabriel would be out of the game right at the gates of the mansion. Suddenly, a trumpet sounds, and the arrival of the emperor and the crown prince is announced. Gabriel and his sister wait with bated breath for the appearance of such high-ranking persons. Finally, the emperor enters the hall with his son, and Isabella cannot take her eyes off them. To the girl's surprise, the crown prince's hair color turns out to be dark, but she expected to see the emperor's hair as silver. However, this is precisely what makes her want to set something on fire here. Gabriel notices his sister's interest and points out that people without friends are left to drink alone in a corner. But the man did not notice that he himself was in the same position and drinking wine. He tries to justify himself and says that he has a lot of friends, but no one has ever talked to him. In this case, Gabby asks the girl to wait for him while he brings his friends. The young man begins to walk among the crowd of people and look for at least someone familiar, and Isabella watches her brother closely and considers him a fool. However, now her attention is drawn to something completely different. From the very beginning, something has been bothering her very much about this ball. She seems to sense some familiar aura from this crown prince. Together with the lady dancing with him, they seem like the perfect couple to everyone. Isabella hears these words and does not agree with such arguments at all. The girl encounters a crowd of aristocrats who clearly have their eyes trained on her, and it is obvious that talking to them will not lead to anything good. After this, Isabella looks once again at the prince and his couple, who are the subject of so much discussion today. But no matter how perfect a couple they may seem, the lady looks quite unhappy. How can you be so blind and not notice the gloom on the faces of these people? The girls are outraged by this answer and decide to strike back. One of the ladies comments that Isabella's dress looks plain and like a wildflower from the roadside. At this moment, our heroine realizes that this is the war that Jessie was talking about. But the girl decides to respond with a compliment and says that this lady looks like a creature in the moment of mating. The aristocrat clearly did not expect such an insult directed at her. The girl almost faints right there in the ballroom after hearing this. But Isabella has no idea that her strong compliment was actually an insult. Suddenly, Gabby appears from behind and admires her sister's actions. He came to see if Isabella was being humiliated, but he himself was shocked. She dealt with this upstart so skillfully that she had no words to respond. Gabby praises her sister, who still doesn't understand anything. The young man decides to explain that Isabella won this duel. After this, the crowd of nasty aristocrats decides to retreat, and Isabella reminds her brother that he was going to meet his friends. But he explains that his friend didn't come today, and the girl pretends to believe him. However, Gabby notices that his sister is constantly staring at something. He looks in the same direction and notices the crown prince there with his bride. The young man decides to close the girl's eyes so that she doesn't stare so intently. But all this time, Isabella cannot understand why the prince's aura is so familiar to her. After all, he is just a man, and the girl decides to touch him to check everything. However, Gabby explains that such an act cannot be bought off with money. If our heroine's strength was in order, she could check everything without touching. And now she will have to do it, despite the dire consequences. After this, Isabella confidently and persistently walks towards the crown prince. The young man notices the girl's intent gaze on him and becomes a little scared. The girl understands that it is difficult to get closer to the prince in a natural way, especially after he became wary at the sight of Isabella. So our heroine decides to invite the crown prince to dance. But everyone around perceived this gesture as outrageous and madness. But Isabella doesn't pay attention to the displeased looks, because she has her own goal. And to her great surprise, the crown prince agrees to dance with her. At this moment, the young man says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Isabella is very surprised that the crown prince and the owner of her body are acquainted. After this, the music starts and all the couples start dancing. This evening, all the discussion revolves around the couple Isabella and the prince. And the girl was trying to confirm her assumptions all this time. Touching the young man, she clearly understood that he was bound by a contract with a demon. He is literally oozing energy and has gained a lot of power, so the girl decides to step on his foot. She then tells him that if such pain stops him, then he is not worthy of wearing the crown. But the crown prince smiles and explains that he is not in any pain. Then Isabella steps on his foot with her heel again. The young man explains that she can do this as much as she wants, but she shouldn't say such strange things. In any case, he feels that Isabella looks different. The crown prince decides to find out if the girl really did what she wanted. After all, the young man knows that Isabella was going to make a contract with the demon. Our heroine is shocked and asks the prince to repeat it again. Could it be that the real Isabella told the young man about her contract? At this moment, the girl decides to answer that everything is so. The young man becomes sad and explains that he asked her not to do this. However, how can he speak so hypocritically if he himself signed the contract? The crown prince replies that this is also true, and Isabella never listened to others anyway. But now, according to him, our heroine has frightened even Lady Clement. Isabella looks over to see who the prince is referring to. Nearby, she sees the girl with whom he recently danced. Lady Clement is very frightened and cannot hide her emotions. She notices that our couple has paid attention to her and decides to look away. The prince never told her about the contract, but judging by her reaction, she guesses. And Lady Clement has to accept the young man as her partner. because she has no choice. The Viscount's son would do anything to make his sister empress. Even if the emperor himself was connected to the demon, he wouldn't care. But it would never occur to an ordinary person that his opponent had made a deal with a demon, and Lady Clement might think Isabella did it. However, the prince believes that it is his fault, as he did not foresee this. However, the young man thinks that he might be angry with the girl for what she said to his fiancé. After this, he decides to ask who she really is, and who suddenly needed to wear Isabella's body, pretending to be her. At this time, the musicians finish playing their part on the string instruments. All couples bow to each other and disperse after this dance. But suddenly, the crown prince grabs our heroine by the hand and leads her along. Ignoring the people, he tries to take her to a quiet place. And all the aristocrats look at our couple and are speechless. After all, if a man and a woman leave the ballroom and retire to the terrace, this can cause a scandal. There is no better place not only for tenderness, but also for unfinished conversation. The crown prince is going to find out how a demon appeared in his friend's body. At this point, Isabella wonders if the young man is going to tell others about this. After all, if he does this, he himself will suffer, since he has made a contract with a demon. But the crown prince had no intention of telling anything and was only interested in who was really standing in front of him. Isabella tells him her name, but the young man doesn't think it's her real name. However, the girl insists that this is exactly what she was called in the demon world, although she was most often called Bella, and she is a contract lord. Suddenly, the crown prince gets down on one knee and apologizes to the demon for his disrespectful tone. He explains that there are some records about her in the Imperial Library. After this, the girl asks what kind of relationship the young man has with the real Isabella. The crown prince reports that they have been friends for a long time and understood each other, and when she found out that the young man had signed a contract, she said that she envied him. But what is there to envy if in such deals the person always loses? However, if the crown prince had been afraid of death, he would never have entered into the agreement. He hoped that Isabella would never do something like this. But he was wrong. And the girl at this moment explains that it was not she who signed the contract with Isabella. After this, she tells the prince the whole story of what happened to her. And the return of the real Isabella depends on what contract she signed. If the power of the contract is enough to seal it inside the body, then the chances of its return are practically zero. The crown prince cannot even guess the true content of the contract, but promises to provide any assistance. After all, if Bella is the result of his friend's will, then helping her is the only reason to find peace. The girl understands that she has no reason to refuse such help. However, she is also curious about which demon the crown prince made a pact with. After this, the young man honestly admits with whom he signed the contract. Sometime later, Isabella finds herself at her estate after the ball. Jessie offers the lady to close the window, but she refuses her help. Isabella sends the maid to work, and she is a little upset because she refuses her help. But our heroine is now preoccupied with her last conversation with the prince. After all, he told her that the demon he had made a contract with was named Dantalion. Isabella never thought she would hear the name of the Lord of Submission again. But what is Dantalion planning in the middle world, since he has made a contract with the crown prince of the empire? At this moment, Isabella sees a little mouse outside her window. After this, she turns her head and checks the time. There were only a few minutes left until midnight, and Sir barely made it in time with the information. The Rat Lord whined a lot, but in the end, he did his job perfectly, and as soon as dawn came, Isabella immediately went to the mine. However, her brother Gabby, whom she had not invited at all, decided to join her. The thing is that his father asked him to look after his sister, and he went after her. But to Isabella, it sounds like the old man has gone completely mad. However, she congratulates her brother on winning the Duke's favor, and again irritates him. He asks that upon arrival at the site, the contract for extraction be immediately handed over, and that some apology be made. Gabby also demands that Isabella stay away from the crown prince, but this is impossible. At this moment, he remembers that yesterday he and the young man had retired to the terrace. Gabby hopes that Isabella does not intend to take the place of crown princess. After all, then her position will become higher than that of her brother, and he is against this. But Isabella grabs the young man by the lapels and explains that he cannot control her actions. At the same time, she has no intention of becoming empress, and Gabby should stop getting underfoot. After a long journey, our heroes find themselves in the mansion of the Marquis Clement. Isabella enjoys the delicious dessert, as there is nothing like it in the demon world. Still, the inhabitants of the middle world have more pleasures than they deserve. And no one knows when the girl is destined to return back, so it's worth eating your fill. And at this point, Gabby was already tired of waiting for the Marquise to finally appear. At this moment, the door to the living room suddenly opens, and the owner of the house appears. Isabella immediately turns her attention to him, without looking up from her food. And Gabby hopes the man didn't hear him complaining. A young man welcomes guests to the house of the Marquis Clement. At this time, the girl recalls a conversation with the Crown Prince about how she is very different from the real Isabella. The man sits down opposite our heroes and is a little surprised. The young Marquis Clemente did not think that Gabby would also honor this house with her visit. He believes that the Duke was very nervous about letting his daughter go alone. At this point, Gabriel begins to feel a little awkward, and Isabella doesn't understand why everyone is staring at her so intently. The thing is that the girl creates the impression that she is being starved at home. However, she was already fed only grass, especially before the ball. After this, Isabella decides to ask how Nadia's doing, but the young Marquise did not expect that the girl would ask him about this. After all, she had only just come to her senses after being on the brink of death. Isabella doesn't like the tone of the young man, who acts like a piece of idiot. Therefore, she replies that her relatives do not value Nadia very much, since they sent her to the ball after her life was threatened. Moreover, there are rumors that the girl did not want an engagement to the Crown Prince, but it was the house of the Marquise of Clemente that insisted on arranging this. However, the young man denies his involvement in this, as he would not have forced his sister into marriage. And Isabella already knows perfectly well that this family sold poor Nadia. After this, she asks Gabby if he noticed the young Marquis's face, distorted with greed. And Clemente replies that the lady is behaving rather rudely towards him. He thought she had come to apologize, but now his family would have to resolve the issue officially. Isabella decides to find out how exactly they will do this. The young Marquise promises to file a complaint against the ducal house, but our heroine also has something to say. For example, the fact that the Marquis's family framed her and accused her of poisoning Nadia. Nadia was incredibly careless and left a lot of traces when she bought the poison. She must really hate the prince to have gone this far. As for the young Marquise, he is so greedy that he even dragged Isabella into it. At this moment, he crumples the paper containing all the evidence in a fit of excitement. Clement doesn't understand how the girl got all this information. She replies that she simply released a couple of rats, and the young man believes that they were spies. But he doesn't understand that Isabella meant rats in the literal sense. After this, Gabby loses his temper and is ready to tear the young Marquise to pieces for such a setup. He grabs the guy by the lapels and tells him that he sensed a catch from the start. Isabella may have a nasty character, but she's not so cunning as to poison anyone. Our heroine decides to intervene in the conflict and reports that Gabby grabbed the young man too tightly. At this moment, her brother releases the Marquise, and he tries to come to his senses. And Isabella invites him to imagine what will happen if the Duke finds out about everything. Considering how much he values honor, breaking a couple of columns in the Marquise's mansion would be a small thing. But beyond that, he will ensure that the name of Clemenitis will never again be heard in the capital. After this, Isabella gets the agreement for the diamond mine. Together with Gabby, they carefully study the papers and try to understand the essence of what is happening. And Isabella explains that she is ready to take all the blame on herself if the Marquise signs the contract. In exchange for this deal, Clemente will receive ownership of the diamond mine. But all diamonds mined there will be transferred to Isabella Dangshan's trading company, and the Marquise's family will not receive any payment for the extraction and transfer of the stones. The minimum monthly production quota is also indicated at the bottom of the agreement. The young Marquise calls Isabella a devil, and she doesn't dare argue with him. After this, she begins to deftly twist the fork in her hand. Then, the girl suddenly thrusts it into the back of the sofa, right next to the young man's head. She advises Clement to just shut up and sign the contract. Her gaze is so persistent and furious that the young man has no other choice. After a successful deal, Isabella returns to her carriage. Gabby wonders if the girl is worried about her damaged reputation, but she shows him Klementov's signature on the document and tells him that reputation is not important. After all, first of all, a girl prefers to feel the benefit. However, what will she do if the old man finds out about everything? Isabella replies that as long as Gabby keeps her mouth shut, nothing will happen. At this time, the Duke is having a not very pleasant conversation with someone in his office. He can't believe what he just heard from some girl. She is very nervous and clutches the hem of her dress with tension. After this, she repeats once again that the lady did not try to poison her. She is innocent, and all rumors about this are blatant lies. Nadia herself came to the Duke and told him that she had voluntarily drunk the poison. After this, the girl bows to the man and announces her departure. She leaves the Duke alone, deep in thought about what happened. The man couldn't even imagine that everything happened exactly like this. It turns out that Isabella did not poison Lady Clemente at all. It was Nadia's own foolish act to avoid an engagement with the crown prince. But why didn't she tell the truth earlier and let the rumors get to this point? At this moment, the father remembers that he missed something in the past. Isabella was actually trying to tell him that she had not poisoned the lady. But the Duke didn't even listen to his daughter and simply ignored her, as always. However, why did Isabella later admit her guilt in this? The father was never angry with his daughter because he had common sense. But after his wife's death, he was too busy to pay attention to Isabella. He never liked his daughter, and she only tarnished the family's reputation. And the father concentrated on cleaning up her mess. Every time he forgot about her, Isabella would create a new scandal. So even the last time he had no reason to seek the truth. Perhaps the Duke made an unforgivable mistake in relation to Isabella. At this time, Nadia also decides to apologize to our heroine. But Isabella never expected such a turn of events. And she still doesn't fully understand why the girl decided to apologize. And Nadia explains that it was because of her that the lady got into trouble. Isabella notices her direct gaze and understands that she is not lying. But the girl also reports that she has already told the Duke everything, and now Isabella will not see the diamond mine. She is so angry that she will never forgive the Marquisette for this. Nadia notices that Isabella looks quite unhappy. However, the girl could not stand by and watch as the reputation of the Duke's daughter was destroyed. Isabella reports that she listened to the apology, and now Nadia can go. But she came not only to apologize, but also to say goodbye, since she was leaving for a monastery. After all, Nadia wants to spend the rest of her life praying to God. However, Isabella explains that this is pointless, and God will never hear her. He went into hiding after the great demon was sealed. No matter how much people pray, while the owner is absent, no one will answer. Nadia thinks that Isabella simply doesn't believe in God. But the matter is completely different. Initially, Nadia hoped that her brother would take pity on her after the poisoning. But it turned out that the young Marquise didn't care about her, and everything was useless. In the demon world, no one regrets anything, because their lives are too long to cling to the past. Therefore, they do not accumulate grievances, but choose to immediately forget about everything or first take revenge. But people don't live to be 100 years old, and they probably have something to regret. Isabella tells the girl that she is mistaken, and that simply running away will not change her fate. And if she really wants to fix something, then she needs to put her life on the line. The real Isabella told Nadia the same thing when they met, but our heroine explains that it is someone else's life that is at stake, not your own. She wonders if the Clements have other relatives in the Marquise's house. If not, then Nadia will take her brother's place when he disappears. Thus, the girl must aim for the place of the heir. This way, she can switch places with her brother and make him the crown princess. Although at the moment this picture looks very strange, but in Isabella's dreams, this is the most pleasant outcome of the situation. And at that moment, Nadia seriously set her sights on becoming the heir. The girl thanks the Duke's daughter and promises to visit her again. She also reports that Isabella has changed a lot since their last meeting. Previously, the lady advised her to risk her life if she wanted to change something. At that time, she was seriously worried that she would have to do something extreme. But now, Isabella has said to risk someone else's life, and that changes things completely. Nadia blossoms at the idea and promises to meet the lady again soon. And Isabella now sees what a strange person the Marquise's daughter is. After this, Jessie appears and tells the lady urgent news. Duke Dankand is looking for his daughter and asks her to come into his office. Isabella is a little scared that her father demands to meet her. A contract appears in her mind, but slowly flies out of her hands. The girl is angry that the Duke intends to take away her mine. After this, she meets her father, and he decides to talk to her. He wonders why his daughter confessed to something she didn't do. Of course, it was done for the sake of the diamond mine, but the truth cannot be told. So Isabella tells the Duke that he wouldn't have believed her anyway. At this moment, the father apologizes, something he has never done in his entire life. However, the one to whom he really should apologize is no longer here, and he will return the mine that they wanted to give as compensation to Isabella. The girl got her way, and now all that remains is to ask Sir to return the contract. Meanwhile, the father reports that his daughter must be very upset with him, but she replies that resentment only appears when someone does not live up to expectations. Since she has no expectations from her father, there is nothing to be offended about. Isabella doesn't have time to sort things out and just wants to get back to the room as soon as possible. And her father continues to assure her that he deeply regrets his actions. At this moment, the girl suddenly feels something strange inside her body. The magical seal engraved on her heart begins to react, and the sealed magic gradually returns to Isabella. Our heroine now understood why the Marquise's daughter did this. She, apparently, also wanted her family to regret what they had done. But now too much magic has returned to the girl at once, and she is feeling ill. Isabella can no longer cope with her condition and is weakening. At this point, she starts coughing up blood again and falls to the floor. Hearing what happened, Gabriel immediately bursts into the room. The doctor has already examined the lady and reports that Isabella has no pathologies. But Gabriel doesn't believe him and considers the doctor an ordinary charlatan. After all, his sister was coughing up blood and she couldn't be okay. Seeing the younger Duke's mood, the doctor asks him to calm down first. He explains that the young lady has gained weight and looks even healthier than before. But the Duke still asks to check his daughter again, since coughing up blood is really very frightening. And Gabrielle reports that this is the third time she has felt this bad. Her father knew about only 2 cases and does not understand why his son did not tell him about them right away. In this case, the doctor once again suggests that the family turn to the church. If medicine is powerless, then it is worth trying to use holy power. Gabriel immediately rushes to fetch the priest, but his father stops him. To request a priest from the temple, certain procedures must be followed. But Gabby isn't about to just watch his sister die. The Duke suggests waiting until morning and contacting the temple through the emperor. And Gabriel begins to accuse the doctor of not noticing the girl's illness. And now this old man must suffer, not his own sister. Gabby even promises to seize the ducal power before the doctor leaves. The young man completely loses his common sense, and no one can do anything about it. Now the Duke understands that the upbringing in this family was a crushing failure. At the northern edge of the demon world, there is a huge chasm. It is filled with flaming lava, and demons throw human souls into it when they are bored. Of course, not every soul can get there, but only the one marked by Archangel Gabriel. After this, they become easy targets for demons. But by the way, why did Bella end up in this particular place now? It was always noisy here because of the screams, so she kept away from the abyss. Therefore, the girl decides to get away from the rift as quickly as possible. But suddenly, she hears the barking of some animal, similar to a dog. At this moment, a small, cute puppy approaches Isabella. The dog looks very scared in this scary place. Then this cute creature turns its gaze to the abyss. Isabella notices this and understands that the puppy is worried about these souls. But it's not worth it, because the people who were dumped were vicious, and this lava melts the sins that were engraved on them. Although all people sin, these souls are completely different and were marked by Gabriel. However, there are too many souls in the lava, although less than 10 should accumulate in a century. Nowadays, many people have to pay for their sins, and Gabriel is very merciful to souls, fulfilling the wishes of the heavenly gods. But has the number of sinners in the mortal realm increased so dramatically? Or have the archangel's feelings changed? At this point, the puppy, in dog language, communicates that he is worried about these souls. But Isabella knows that this creature is actually a human. Apparently, the dog didn't know that the girl would see this in him. Without a contract, a human soul cannot remain intact in the demon realm. So now Isabella is interested in who this puppy made a contract with. The animal begins to tremble with fear, but the girl remains persistent in her question. At this moment, the soul excitedly announces that her name is Isabella. This is a surprising coincidence, since the mistress of contracts has exactly the same name. But in the demon world, her name is shortened and simply called Bella. At this moment, the girl notices that the puppy began to shake even more violently. She promises not to harm the contractor just because they have the same name. But this will only last as long as this soul does not threaten her. At this moment, Isabella begins to experience a strange feeling of déjà vu. She gets the feeling that she has suffered because of another demon's contract before. Suddenly, everything in her eyes begins to blur and disappear. Isabella wakes up to see a worried Jessie's face in front of her. She opens her eyes and still cannot comprehend what is happening. She still can't shake that strange feeling after the demon world. It turns out that it was all a stupid dream, and her reality is in the Middle Kingdom. At this point, Jessie, with tears in her eyes, reports that the lady had been unconscious all day. The doctor said that there was nothing wrong with her body, but Gabriel went crazy because of it. I wonder if the real Isabella would have liked it that her brother was so worried about her. Our heroine's magical power has been restored, but it's still only a tenth. If the girl can restore at least half, then she will be able to return to the demon world. And the human soul she met in her dream said that her name was Isabella. At this point, Jessie announces that they decided to escort the lady to the temple so as not to wait for the priest. This is not usually allowed, but for the Duke they made concessions. But the demon will never enter the temple, and Isabella gives up on the crazy idea. However, her opinion on this matter no longer concerns anyone, and together with the carriage, she goes to the priests. Isabella herself does not understand how things could have come to this. Now, together with the crown prince, the demon goes to the holy temple. The young man reports that the Duke seems to be very worried about his daughter. Usually, it takes months to enroll in the temple, but the prince used his connections for Isabella. But the girl promises that if she dies, she will drag the guy along with her. However, he explains that he does not intend to cause problems for Bella. On the contrary, the crown prince intends to help the girl get out of trouble. The Duke asked to send a priest, but then Isabella's magical power would be revealed. Of course, our heroine would be upset if a bunch of people attacked her. Although some of her magical powers had returned, problems were inevitable. And the crown prince says that it would be better for Isabella to go to the temple with him. In that case, she wonders if the young man has a way to hide her power. At this moment, the crown prince takes out of his pocket what the owner gave him. The prince made a contract with Dantalion, who can't stand Isabella. That's why she's very shocked that someone calls him master. It turns out that this is one of the conditions of the contract, and not the young man's personal preference. After this, the crown prince hands the girl a piece of paper with a seal drawn on it. This is the power of Fursona, who is the Lord of Lies and is very skilled in this craft. Just to sow chaos in the world, he sometimes creates such circles and turns magical power into holy power. This is not so difficult to do, since originally the gods and demons were brothers. This is precisely why the crown prince has always managed to avoid exposure. But even so, the Lord of Subordination would never care about the contractor. Apparently, he wants to achieve something using the crown prince. The power of the Lord allows the young man to subjugate and control others. As unpleasant as it may be to admit, Lord Dantalion's capabilities are quite great. Isabella has one story related to this demon lord. Once upon a time, he tried to use his power on her. But fortunately, at that moment, Lilith managed to stop Dantalion. If she hadn't intervened, it's unknown how it would have all ended. Remembering this incident, Isabella decides to warn the prince about something important. The girl forbids him to use the power of submission in her presence. And if he disobeys her, then the prince will face inevitable death at the hands of our heroine. This threat greatly frightens the young man, and he promises to keep it in mind. After some time, Isabella and the crown prince find themselves in the domain of a majestic temple. The girl meets a priest who asks the lady to give him her hand. Isabella could not have imagined that she would have to come so close to a servant of God. But now she is calm, because she has a talisman that hides her power. She gives her hand to the priest and hopes that nothing terrible will happen. However, the man screams from the energy he felt. Could Isabella's secret identity be revealed right now? The priest does not speak directly and says that he must check everything again. The crown prince decides to intervene and inquires about what is happening to the lady. The servant of God replies that she is fine and not sick. But it seemed that a holy power had awakened within her, which overwhelmed her body and made the girl cough up blood. If we replace the holy power with magical power in the priest's words, then everything will fall into place. Human bodies are really inefficient and can't handle much. And the priest adds that power of this level is so rare that it is difficult to find any historical records about it. After all, in history, there are practically no cases of the awakening of power after birth. After this, the man asks if Isabella has heard the voice of God. But if we talk about a person who heard the voice of the Almighty, the girl knows only one such person. She recalls an incident when a girl conveyed to her God's request that Bella stop blaspheming. But our heroine called her an old hag and asked her to stop reading her mind. This made the young blonde-haired servant of God laugh a lot. And Bella explains that no demon will ever give up blasphemy. And if something can't be avoided, then you just need to enjoy it. At this moment, the priest interrupts Isabella's memories and returns her to reality. He explains that he actually knows of one such case. 500 years ago, Lady Daphne, who was an aristocrat, suddenly awakened a holy power. The priest feels that this is exactly like Isabella's situation, but Lady Duncan asks her not to make fun of her and informs her that she is no saint. Although, if you pretend to be a saint in front of people, it will be the greatest blasphemy. Therefore, Bella decides to agree with the priest and declares herself a saint. After this, the servant of God, in great haste, tries to convey urgent news to the high priest, but he cannot be disturbed now, as he is in the prayer room. However, this is news of particular importance, and the priest decides to whisper it to another priest. Thus, on this day, the entire temple was in an uproar because of Isabella's antics. Finding himself in the courtyard with the crown prince, the young man decides to find out what is going on. Lady Bella looks very proud after declaring herself a saint, but the prince still does not understand why the priest considered her power so powerful. After all, when they tested her at the ball, she was still minimal. Could it be that something happened from that moment, and the girl's strength grew? Isabella explains that at home she coughed up blood, and the duke became worried. The crown prince clutches his head, as he realizes that he should not have brought the girl to the temple. But he himself is to blame for this, because he could have thoroughly checked Bella from the very beginning. The young man agrees with this, but even so he cannot understand one thing. Why did Lady Bella finally agree to declare herself a saint? But if the crown prince can call a demon master, then why can't she become a saint? Isabella asks that her decisions not be questioned, as this is blasphemy of the highest level. And once she returns home, this story will be told for centuries. However, today she is not going to do anything else in the temple, and the prince can relax. At this moment, the girl notices a statue that looks like her in demonic form. The crown prince explains that this is a statue of an archangel named Isabella. Our heroine is furious that there is a name here that is the same as hers. Then the prince decides to tell a story that has been passed down from generation to generation. It turns out that 500 years ago, 5 heroes gathered to seal a demon god. At the forefront was Zachary, who later became the first emperor to be chosen by an angel. This myth was created to hide the emperor's contract with the demon, and Bella's true identity is passed on only to the emperor's heirs. Now the girl understands why Zachary made her an angel for everyone. 500 years ago, she helped her contractor seal a demon god, but this was preceded by a series of events in which Isabella could still avoid betrayal. On the day the girl realized she had made a contract with a man, God made her kneel. He warned her not to get attached to people, but she still disappointed him. However, Isabella can't just break the contract, and yet the demonic god asks her to find loopholes in the contract. After all, the contract only says to help a person seal a god, and that sounds very vague. If Isabella had removed the stone from the hero's path, that would also have been considered help. In any case, the girl never intended to really help. She simply desired this soul and wanted to mock it in case of its fall. This is what Isabella thought until she became attached to a person. Ultimately, she chose to follow in her predecessor's footsteps, despite the demonic god's concern. In this case, he decides to witness her fall after the case is over. Isabella's choice will lead her to endless despair. But then the girl was sure that she would never regret her choice. And after that, Zachary betrayed her, breaking her magic and her heart. These memories still bring pain to our heroine. Even the crown prince notices that Lady Bella's expression has changed. At that moment, she uses her power and destroys the statue. Now it is clear to the girl what Zachary's will really was. He betrayed her and destroyed all true records of history. Isabella never wanted to come to the mortal realm, and now she learned what she didn't want to know. We need to restore magic as soon as possible and return home. In the meantime, the girl awaits a serious conversation at the family table. Gabby can't believe that holy power has awakened in his sister, but in reality, the temple decided to give the girl only the title of candidate. The saint's place will remain free until the priests have checked many things. These smart kids still don't understand enough to immediately declare the girl a saint. However, Gabby believes that God has gone crazy if he gave such power to his sister. Isabella enjoys her brother's words, which refresh her with their blasphemy. And Gabriel calls his father an old man, and his sister even feels sorry that with such talent, the young man is not a demon. After this, he remembers that Isabella also used to call herself a saint on every corner. No one believed her then, but it was obvious that his sister wasn't pretending. Now it is clear why the priests did not make Isabella a saint right away. But did the girl really want to attract the family's attention with her obvious lie? Whatever the reason, such a little prank was stupid. Meanwhile, Gabby and her father stared intently at our heroine. In fact, they thought the girl was lying, and she didn't even have the strength then. The father suggests that the girl had a revelation first. But Gabby disagrees. The Duke must speak for himself and not drag his son into the fact that he did not believe his sister. However, the truth is that Gabby also doubted Isabella's words. At this moment, our heroine believes that this is an excellent chance to make her family regret what they did. Isabella reports that it was very painful for her to encounter their distrust. After all, even if the whole world throws stones at her, her family should be on her side. But the reality turned out to be completely different, and no one believed the girl. Suddenly, Isabella feels the amount of returning magic begin to increase. Now it's clear that this only works after her family starts to regret something. After this, Isabella asks her brother to give her his food, which he did not touch. And now all the conversations in the church revolve around the new saint. Yesterday there was already a night meeting regarding this lady. The high priest informs her that her power awakened late, and she cannot be a saint. But the surest way to check everything is to get an answer from Lord Gabriel. Angels can appear to people only once a year, and there are still 9 months to wait. Before that time, our heroine needs to regain her strength and return home. And yet, our heroine doesn't like the way the high priest looks at her. People who act kindly and hide their contempt are the worst of the worst. At this point, the high priest invites the lady to prove her strength herself, without waiting for the archangel. But she says that they must prove that they are ready to serve under her command. The high priest is tense at this tone and explains that the girl does not understand her role at all. However, no one knows more about the saint than our heroine. After all, she personally knew a girl who held such a title. To prove her power to everyone, she simply staged a scene in the temple and was immediately recognized as a saint. Lady Daphne was a truly compassionate woman and never abused her abilities. In the end, Isabella decides to give up and asks what proof the priests need. The men exchange glances and give each other the go-ahead to voice their demands. After this, the high priest says that it would be better if Isabella summons the divine beast. He disappeared 500 years ago after the death of the Holy Lady Daphne. Isabella remembers that bird, which was not divine at all and was the guardian of the mortal realm. People thought so only because this beast always followed Daphne. The high priest decides to break Bella's silence and reveals that she knows nothing about this beast. The divine bird was sent to the human world to protect them from demons. In appearance, it resembles a wolf, and its fur should shine bright silver. But for some reason, according to the description, this animal looks like Isabella's Kamangi. About 300 years ago, she found a monster cub on her territory. At that time, a battle between demonic creatures broke out at this place. But judging by the scale of the massacre, it was a one-sided massacre. And suddenly, Isabella's attention was drawn to the quiet cry of a small animal. Apparently, this baby monster was also drawn into the battle. Bella grabbed the beast by the scruff of the neck, which only spoke the word Kamangi. The girl was impressed by the baby's unusual cry. But now she is more concerned about who caused this mess. After all, they must pay for what they did on its territory. Isabella notices that the little animal is trembling and decides to hug it to her chest. She promises that as soon as she finds the ringleaders, she will immediately tear them to pieces. And that day, our heroine took Kamangi with her to the castle and healed his wounds. Remembering this, Isabella begins to miss her beast. But if she could pretend to be a saint, then why couldn't Kamangi become a divine beast? While the high priest waits for the girl's answer, she has already thought everything through. Therefore, Isabella promises that she will bring this beast to the priests. Her confidence even sent goosebumps down the skin of the god's servants. After such an unpleasant conversation, it's time for some dessert. To create that crispy crust, the sugar was caramelized. Isabella is delighted with the desserts of the Middle East, as she would never find them at home. But the crown prince explains that now is not the best time to talk about crème brûlée. In this case, Isabella does not understand why the young man invited her to his place. It turns out that the temple is currently in turmoil because the girl agreed to bring the divine beast. But the priests themselves asked her to summon the animal, and Isabella only agreed. However, the temple was only trying to put the girl in a difficult position. Moreover, our heroine has no idea how to summon a divine beast. Isabella finds it strange that the crown prince is so worried about her. At first, he disguised her magic as holy power to hide her demonic identity. The young man then pulled Bella out of the temple and is now worried about the divine beast. Even if this body belonged to his girlfriend, he is interfering too much. At this moment, the crown prince feels a sense of excitement and understands that he must tell the truth. The thing is that once he looks at a lady, he cannot look away and always wants to be close. He also thinks that Isabella might do something wrong again. But in any case, the girl keeps Contractor Dantalion close by, and this only plays into her hands. The crown prince notices Bella reading the sacred scripture she stole from the temple. However, they are all full of lies and are hardly worth opening at all. Believers who serve the Almighty are expected to meet him in heaven after death. Complete nonsense that people came up with and made others believe in it. Except in special cases, human death ends with the disappearance of the soul. Isabella decides to find out why people expect to see the Almighty, who has been gone for 500 years. They reject demons as evil, but fabricate lies as if they were demons themselves. At this point, the crown prince can no longer withstand the flow of information. He is surprised that the information about the divine beast is actually a lie. The heroes squad believed that the beast's name lacked dignity, although it was an ordinary animal from the Middle Kingdom. As a result, the simple name Fluffy turned into a divine bird. The crown prince is shocked that the legendary beast in whose honor the festivals are held had such a name. Isabella remembers that very place in front of the Sylvester Forest, in the very north of the continent. She went there with the heroes and was attracted by a strange sound in the bushes. At that moment, an unusual animal with silver fur came out to her. He looked like a huge dog with angel wings on his back. The beast then found it strange that there was a demon among people. However, the most important thing for him was to convey important information to people. His name is Nigel, and he has come to join the journey and stop the demon god. But people do not understand divine speech and cannot use it without special power. However, Isabella does not feel such power from this beast, which seems to have been simply trained by someone. That's why she doesn't mince words and responds rudely to Nigel. In such an angry mood, Bella tells the people that this animal's name is Fluffy and he wants to go with them. To spite the animal, she also adds that he really likes it when his tail is stroked. If you think about it, it was probably because of Bella that he was called the divine beast. However, the crown prince cannot understand why the lady calls the animal a bird. It turns out he actually did have wings when she first saw him, but those angel wings were so annoying that she took them off. Initially, Bella was going to cut them off, but Fluffy said that he could just hide them. However, judging by the prince's expression, he clearly imagined a more terrible picture. In any case, there is no need to worry about the divine beast anymore, because instead of Pushka, Bella is going to summon Kamangi into this world. The crown prince clutches his head, as this plan is a complete lie. At first, the girl wanted to summon the beast using a magic circle. But for this, she needs Kamangi's item, so all that remains is to create a temporary portal to the demon realm. However, Isabella has not yet fully restored her magic and cannot open the portal herself. Therefore, she plans to combine her power with the holy power of the priests and turn it into magic. Since previously the servants of God and the demons were brothers, this can be done. But first, Isabella needs to get the magic stones that appear when you destroy monsters. The crown prince has doubts about this plan, as it is too complicated. Magic stones are deadly to humans and are destroyed immediately along with the monsters. Even if they try to pick them up quickly, it will take at least a month to assemble a team. Isabella didn't know this and decides to move to the background. And the crown prince is surprised that this girl also has a backup plan. After this, the girl points her finger at the young man and says that she will really need him. There is also one more person who must participate in this idea, and it will be Isabella herself, who will not deviate from her plan. The girl explains that she and the prince will go hunting monsters. The crown prince is shocked that this is the lady's entire plan. After some time, the young man sends Isabella home in his carriage, and Gabby doesn't understand why his sister is traveling around in the imperial escort. He was very surprised when he learned that Isabella had gone to the temple with the crown prince. The girl, in his opinion, has gone crazy, since she will not be able to become the crown princess anyway. But Isabella explains that the crown prince already has a passion, and she does not intend to share. Gabby asks her to just shut up, as her talking is giving him a headache. After this, the girl silently turns around and goes to her room. But the brother decides to take an interest in the nonsense that Isabella volunteered to summon the divine beast. Could this be a requirement to become a saint? And how is his sister going to summon a beast that disappeared 500 years ago? Although, maybe these idiots did this because of Isabella's origin. These words clearly interested our heroine, and she asks for clarification. It turns out that Isabella's mother comes from that very same Graham family. Now, things are gradually starting to become clear to the girl. The first saint was called Daphne Graham, and the Dancandys were her descendants. After some time, Isabella sits by the fire and remembers her brother's words. Saint Daphne was the last person to know the location of the beast. The temple probably thinks that her descendant will be able to summon him. Several years ago, the head of the Graham family died and left no heir. And now it turns out that Isabella is a descendant of Daphne. Since the Grahams had no heirs, the estate passed to the Duncan family, and the real Isabella stayed in this empty house every night. But it's difficult to understand anything here, considering how the communication with Daphne ended. At that moment, the saint was very frightened that Zachary had gone crazy and tried to warn Bella about it. And the crown prince interrupts the girl's thoughts and informs her that, for everyone's sake, she will spend several days in the prayer room. Due to the travel, the schedule will be very tight, and he would like to know about the plans in advance. But Isabella explains that the prince is only required to complete his part of the tasks. She has already thought everything through, and the young man just needs to follow her. Bella could have gone alone, but she took the prince with her because he was unreliable. Of course, these words make the young man think seriously, and he has no choice but to thank the lady. After this, together with the prince, they set off to carry out a crazy plan. Isabella decides to put her hair in a ponytail to keep it out of her way, and the crown prince reports that the residents saw a monster in the dense forest near the village. If this is really the case, then Isabella simply needs to go there. Suddenly, the girl hears some strange sounds nearby. It sounds like the cry of some little child in a dense forest. Although it sounds like fantasy, Isabella decides to check it out. Coming to the sound, the girl discovers a crying child in the bushes. It is clear that the girl is lost and is desperately calling for her mother. The crown prince can't believe he saw a child in this place. Now, all that remains is to somehow help the girl lost in the dense forest. Isabella looks sternly at the child, and it seems that she is clearly dissatisfied. After this, she reaches out her hand to the girl, and the crown prince tries to stop her. But our heroine simply decides to take the baby in her arms to calm her down. And she asks the crown prince not to shout, as he makes a lot of noise. At that moment, the young man was very surprised that the demon showed concern for the child. Even Isabella could guess perfectly well what he was thinking at that moment. The girl then tells the child that it is dangerous here, and she will take her home. And putting aside the search for the monster, Isabella goes to the nearest village. All this time, the little girl does not take her eyes off her savior. After this, she wonders if this girl is an angel, but Isabella explains that she is much more majestic than some angel. However, the most amazing of all the girls knew was the Lord of the Sky, and Bella replies that he was once dust beneath her feet. Having reached a safe place, our heroine lets the girl go and asks her to continue on her own. She warns the little girl not to dare go to such dangerous places alone again. The crown prince did not expect Bella to treat the child so tenderly. Are demons really capable of showing compassion to people? Isabella noticed her comrade's surprise and decides to tell him how demons are born. They emerge from the fires of hell and have neither father nor mother. Demons cannot create life like angels, so they are lenient towards children. The crown prince is shocked by this truth and has never heard about it. But at that moment, together with the girl, they hear strange sounds. The young man is horrified by what suddenly appears before them, and Bella is only glad that the object of their search came to them himself. Since the monster decided to relieve her of unnecessary problems, it was time to get down to business. At the same time, the girl wants to check how much her strength has increased. After this, Isabella finds a tree and thinks that it should suit her perfectly. She jumps onto the strongest branch and decides to look around. Isabella then reveals that she is trying to find a place to hide. While the lady sits in the tree, the crown prince must deal with the monster. But the young man is confident that even with sealed magic, Bella's power will be greater than that of a human or a monster. Isabella agrees with him, and the crown prince points his finger at the monster. After all, a girl can handle a creature of this level herself. And indeed, Isabella can put this baby to bed with one hand. But why should she waste her precious energy when she has a prince? The young man understands that he has nowhere to go and grabs his sword. At this moment, the monster suddenly jumps on our hero. However, the crown prince shows courage and draws his sword against him. But no matter how the young man swung his weapon, the monster remained safe and sound. Isabella is even surprised at how poorly the crown prince is coping. How could a man who had a contract with a demon simply avoid battle? This sword is absolutely useless against monsters, and the young man needs to use aura. However, after making a contract, he cannot do this, as magic and aura are not compatible. And because of the existing aura, magic is also suppressed, and the prince can only use a small part of it. But for Isabella, this is complete nonsense, since magic and aura do not interfere with each other in any way and can exist together. And the crown prince still doesn't understand how this is even possible. Isabella asks the young man to watch carefully, as she will only show it once. At that moment, a small magical clot of energy appears in her hand. The ball instantly grows, and the girl directs this power at the monster. Isabella suddenly launches magic at the monster and hits it in the head. After the creature passes out, the lady decides to clear up some things. The source of demon's power is magic, and the contractor is also endowed with it. For humans, this power is considered defiled, but magical energy can be extracted from it. Knowing how to contain magical energy, the prince will be able to use the aura. And the best thing is to combine purified energy with the aura and become even stronger. Now, Isabella invites the young man to use all this knowledge in practice. The girl asks to finish off the monster, although it is unlikely that the prince will be able to do it right away. She has already observed his attempts enough and decides to intervene. But suddenly, our heroine freezes as she sees something unusual. The crown prince nevertheless applied the knowledge he had acquired and pierced the monster with his sword. Although initially, the young man could not even imagine that this was possible. However, from that moment on, Isabella decides to call the prince a dunce. This means that he is still only half weak. With such outstanding talent, the young man dared to contact Dantalion. After this, Isabella takes the sword to cut down the monster. Then she takes out the magic stone, for which she started all this. The girl asks the man to move away, as the pure energy of the stone is too strong. Magical energy makes demons stronger, but at the same time drives them crazy. But for the lords of the demonic world, it's just like a tasty snack. Isabella swallows a stone, and the crown prince cannot believe his eyes. Suddenly, the girl begins to feel unwell. Bella coughs up blood again, as her human body can't handle the force. After some time, our heroes get into the carriage and set off further. Isabella was so ill that she turned white as death. She says that she is ready to kill everyone. Although when people feel like this, they usually intend to die. The crown prince did not expect that magical energy could threaten even Lady Bella's life. After all, it is a power from the outside world, and even demons have a hard time dealing with it. But the young man had never heard of such a world, and Isabella decides to find out more about some events. However, he knew neither about the era of divine beings, nor about the attack of the outside world. In the original world, there were many creatures, and the era was peaceful. But one day, energy began to flow in from the outside world, causing weak creatures to die. The strong were able to endure this magic, but they could not escape its influence on their minds. Then the divine beings began to resist the outside world, and that is all the prince needs to know for now. After all, he won't live even 100 years, and he doesn't need so much information. After this, Isabella feels a strong decline in strength and asks not to ask her any more questions. In her dream, she hears a voice calling a little child somewhere. This is exactly the kind of child Bella was when she lived in the demon world. The demonic god asked the girl to grow up quickly and become an adult. After all, she must become the sharpest blade and carry out his revenge. Isabella should not have become close to people who wanted to covet the power of a god. At that moment, another demon came to visit his father. He wonders if it's time to pick up the youngest so she can get some sleep. Aaron picks up the girl, who begins to kick violently. It infuriates her to hear the same words from the demonic god every day. After an immeasurably long war, it was being destroyed by demonic energy. As a result, the god of the dark world lost his wisdom, and his thoughts became clouded. In his twisted mind, he hated all humanity. The demonic god perceived their life force as an encroachment on the right granted to him at birth. After this, Aaron suddenly meets someone in the hallway of the house. Lily asks the demon not to tell little Bella about how the old man fell into insanity. At that moment, the girl reaches out to her and gets off her brother's arms. Aaron asks how old Bella is, and she holds up 4 fingers. He thinks that 4 years have passed since her birth, but in fact the girl meant 40 years. Aaron then explains that he feels like Bella is growing too slowly. After all, how can a demon be so small at 40 years old? However, growth depends on Bella's own desire, and no one can influence it. Aaron must remember that the girl was born in peacetime, when the war had already ended. Still, He worries that the child may be lagging behind in his development. Bella is very angry about this opinion of her, and Aaron starts pinching her cheeks. And Lily explains that the girl is a smart little demon even now, and she knows exactly which demon loves her the most. But suddenly, Lily begins to feel some serious danger. At this moment, an explosion occurs, and rock fragments fly in all directions. After this, an angel appears from somewhere in the demonic world. He heard that a new owner of divine power had appeared, but Lily is outraged that Gabriel broke into the demon realm without permission. However, the archangel looks at the girl and realizes that it was true. At this moment, Gabriel gathers all his energy into his hand. He directs a powerful stream of divine power directly into the child. But, fortunately, Lily stands up for the girl and deflects the blow with her magic. However, she still doesn't understand what's happening to Gabriel. And how dare he try to harm her ward in front of the demon queen? Lily is very furious and will not allow anyone to attack Bella, so she asks Aaron to take the girl to a safe place. The demon hugs the child to his chest and prepares to protect her. But Bella is also angry and ready to kill this idiot. At this moment, our heroine wakes up and already feels better. Her carriage had already arrived at the temple, but thoughts from the old dream still haunted her. After Bella's first encounter with the crazy Gabriel, she used all her rage and matured for 100 years. Meanwhile, our heroes get out of the carriage and head towards the rear entrance of the temple. The crown prince made sure that people came here only to bring food. Once Bella is ready to summon the divine beast, she can simply ring the bell. The girl finds this object and immediately begins to act. The ringing of this bell resounds loudly throughout the temple. The high priest takes Bella and reports that Saint Daphne has gotten rid of most of her property. Therefore, only a few of her relics remained in the entire temple. One of them is probably a divine beast summoning circle, although no one has yet succeeded in using this symbol. The high priest suggests that only a true saint can use it. Isabella isn't even sure that this is a summoning circle, since it requires at least a clump of the animal's fur. At this point, one of the priests announces that preparations for the ritual are complete. No one has ever succeeded before, and the high priest asks Bella not to be upset if she fails. And at that moment, the girl realizes that this is indeed a divine beast summoning circle. But even with this scenario, Isabella is going to bring a Blackie into the world. She decides to switch the summoning circles and places her symbol on the stand. At this moment, the priests begin to use divine power and pray. Isabella decides to act quickly before people realize anything. In order to link the magic circle in that place, she must use the beast's true name. Although everyone calls him Blackie, oddly enough, he is more often called by another name. With a huge body that touches the sky, every step he takes colors the earth red, and his name is Sunset. At this moment, a huge magic circle appears in front of Isabella. She calls out the name of her beast and asks it to answer her call. Gradually, the roar of a powerful animal can be heard from outside the circle. The portal begins to open, and the roar becomes even more terrifying. The priests begin to get very worried and do not understand what this sound is. Could it be that Isabella was able to activate the summoning circle and the beast will soon come out? But, unfortunately, the barrier is too strong and the portal will soon close. The girl tries to shout to the animal and calls it to her. At this moment, a cute animal head appears from the portal. These two missed each other very much and are glad to finally meet. Oddly enough, the beast with such a loud roar turned out to be quite cute to look at. Suddenly, Kamangi jumps out of the portal and falls on our heroine. The high priest is shocked that Isabella succeeded, but he didn't expect the divine beast to be so loving. The priests do not believe that this criminal managed to summon the beast, but now she can no longer be called that. She has become a true saint, and the servants of God do not know what to do next. And the high priest reports that the girl has proven her strength. After this, he falls to the floor as if dead and loses consciousness. After some time, Kamangi tells news from the demonic realm. There, Isabella's body lies unconscious, never having come to her senses. Now, it is clear why Kamangi was confused when he heard his mistress's call. She also says that in this world, the Black One will be a divine beast. As expected of Isabella's beast, he accepted it very quickly. However, the crown prince is unhappy that the lady has simplified everything so much. But Chernish is the coolest of all the beasts in the demon kingdom and is worthy of becoming divine. No matter how the prince looks at it, the fact remains that Kamanga has 3 eyes. During the conscription, everything was too chaotic, but sooner or later, people will start to doubt. In the Middle Kingdom, everyone has 2 eyes, and the Blackie's peculiarity will raise a lot of questions. But the crown prince doesn't want Isabella to rip out one of the beast's eyes. This attitude of the owner really scares Chernish, since he hears everything perfectly well. Therefore, in a matter of seconds, the animal begins to do something with its face. After this, his third eye disappears, and now Chernish becomes the same beast as everyone else. Isabella is glad that Kamangi gave up his third eye for her peace of mind. Now there are no problems, and we can announce the return of the saint and the divine beast. And the crown prince wonders whether everything Lady Bella had planned came to fruition. The girl explains that everything went as she planned. Meanwhile, events unfold in the castle of the Demon Queen. Lord of Greed Seer was the last to arrive at the meeting, having almost forgotten about it. He hopes that without him, the other demons haven't started discussing it yet. But the Demon Queen Lilith informs the Lord that he is very late. However, he was lucky that the lady was not in a bad mood today. At this moment, the man realizes that he was not the last one to arrive at the meeting. As it turns out, Lady Bella's chair is empty, and she is also late. And Lilith explains that she will be absent for a couple of months on her instructions. The Lord of Lust is upset by such news, as he really wanted to see the face of the youngest. And the Lord of Lies Fursan answers him that Bella is smart, so she just avoids Belial. Lord of Sloth Zenevia also finds Lord of Lust difficult to deal with. Bella's absence did not go unnoticed by Aemon either, as he had already become accustomed to her manner of speech. And he will be a little sad if the girl starts talking like before. When she was younger, her speech was a little different. But after visiting the Middle Kingdom, everything changed. And at the age of 40, Gabriel attacked her. And after that, Bella began to learn and grow quickly. At this point, Lord of Lust Belial asks permission to ask a question. He wonders why Gabriel attacked Bella, and what crime the little demon could have committed. It turns out that this is all because the girl is a contract lord and has great power. The bearer of the forces of anger and lust is always born a demon and belongs to evil. And for the forces that belong to good, the bearer is always born an angel. But there is also a neutral force, such as a contract or submission, and Gabriel's beloved was one of those. Her name was Uriel, and the archangel tried everywhere to find this girl after her loss. And the birth of a new owner of the power meant that the previous owner of the power of contracts was dead. It turns out that by attacking Bella, Gabriel was simply venting his anger, and the Demon Queen decides not to comment on this assumption. After this, she slams her hand on the chair and demands that he stop talking. After all, today the demons must discuss an important issue. Everyone present is surprised by the appearance of some important question, and Lilith says something that none of the demons expected to hear. It turns out that the Demon Queen is planning to declare war on the Middle Kingdom. This news causes indescribable shock among all the demons present. They couldn't even imagine what plans were spinning in Lilith's head. And the Demon Queen also adds that their goal is to destroy humanity. After this, the entire meeting room of the Dark World falls into silence. The Lord of Lust decides to find out if this is really necessary. It's really funny to watch people. And is there really any point in killing them? But Dantalion decides to side with Lilith and explains the connection between the middle and heavenly realms. The thing is that people who serve the gods must pay for this service. And Seer reports that people sided with the heavens in order to survive, especially since the worship of demons seems strange. However, another demon lord decides to find out the true reason from Lilith herself. Something had to happen before this question was raised. And then the Demon Queen says that it is unknown when the seal of the demon god will be destroyed. For 500 years now they have lived, closing their eyes to this and without thinking. And Seer wonders if there is a way to reapply this seal. You could just extend the seal forever for your father's sake and give him peace. However, this time the demon god will be more careful than ever. Besides, the previous sealing only happened due to luck. But no one knows that it was actually Bella who sealed the demon god, not Lilith. At this point, Dantalion begins to stare at the Demon Queen with intense intensity, and she explains that if the seal falls from her father, the first target of his wrath will be the demons. The destruction of the Middle Kingdom was his greatest desire, and all he needed to do was ease his anger and fulfill his dream. The vote begins, and the first demon speaks out against the idea, and Ser decides to agree, since they have to try to do at least something. The turn to vote goes to Lord of Words Annette, but she has been sleeping this whole time. Aemon tries to wake the girl up, and she begins to react slowly. He reports that it is already the middle of the voting, and it is necessary to decide whether the demons should invade the Middle Kingdom. Annette replies that she is against this, as it is better to use the time to sleep. So far, the voting results show 3 demons in favor of the invasion, and 4 against it. Thus, it turns out that the last vote remains with Lilith. But it is already obvious that the Demon Queen will be in favor of invasion. However, another lord is absent from the meeting and cannot vote now. Since Bella is currently busy with Lilith's assignment, Lilith trusts her with the final decision. She will have to decide whether to destroy humanity or leave them alive. Meanwhile, Isabella's soul roams the demon kingdom in the form of a puppy. The animal stops at the feet of the Queen of Lords and begins to become very agitated. Lilith asked Isabella not to leave the room, as important guests were expected to arrive today. She picks up the puppy and doesn't understand why the dog never obeys. At this moment, another lord witnesses such a strange scene. Dantalion finds this suspicious and decides to find out who this puppy really is. And Lilith introduces Isabella to a lord who is so old and cunning that he doesn't remember how many centuries he has lived. Dantalion replies that he hears everything and knows that this puppy is a human. However, what is he doing in the demon castle, and how did he end up here? The lord has a strange feeling, as if there is something else mixed in the puppy besides Lilith's magic. The Demon Queen expected the cunning and persistent bastard to get to the bottom of this. Dantalion has doubts about Bella's whereabouts and the appearance of this puppy. Even after searching the entire demon realm, he couldn't find a single trace of the contract lord. Now, Dantalion is determined to find out the truth about Bella's true location. After this, the Demon Queen gives in and reveals that she has sent her to the Middle Realm. The Demon Queen explains to Dantalion that Bella's power is too weak, and the previous owner of the contract power was very powerful. At this moment, Dantalion realizes that Zachary was the culprit. However, the Demon Queen reports that she initially thought the same thing. But, oddly enough, that's not all. And Lilith found something interesting after her investigation. It turns out someone played a very funny joke on Bella's life. Lilith doesn't explain what exactly she learned, and only says that, for this, she had to send Bella to the people. The life of a contract lord is not Dantalion's concern, and only the Demon Queen is her guardian. And if he wants to know everything so much, he can find out for himself. Lilith leaves, leaving Dantalion to ponder the fact that someone has staged an exciting game. It was very convenient that a person named Isabella and a weakened contract lord appeared. And that jerk Zachary deserves to be torn to pieces, because he was supposed to be reborn. Human souls are rarely reborn, as the heavenly kingdom must be involved. Lilith hates feeling caught up in someone else's game. But Bella's life is more important right now. The thought that someone dared to pull their stumps on her makes the girl furious. Meanwhile, Bella herself is enjoying the abundance of food in the Middle Kingdom. Every day in the demon world was just like this. But now she realized the true value of power. Now she is treated very differently because she is the first saint in 500 years. Jessie decides to warn the lady and asks her not to say that. But Bella forbids her to whine and demands to be given the most delicious grapes. At this point, Gabriel demands that his sister stop hanging around the temple. However, Bella says she can't hear anything and asks him to squeak louder. Gabby says that his sister shouldn't have run away from home, and it's time to come back. The girl replies that he is partly right, and the young man feels that he has achieved his goal. But Bella explains that she is no longer at the age to run away from home, and it would be more correct to call it independence. And why should she leave this beautiful place and return to the Duke's house? Gabby understands that she and her father have really let Bella down, but she begs her to come back. After staying in the temple for some time, the girl began to notice small changes in her family. Her mana is gradually returning, and she is in the winning position. At this moment, Chernish returns to Bella after a walk outside. Gabby sees for the first time the divine beast that his sister summoned. But from the outside, he looks like an ordinary puppy, and there is nothing special about him. Suddenly, Kamangi grows to the size of a huge beast and begins to growl at the boy. And Bella asks Chernish not to eat Gabby, as he will have indigestion. After this, the animal turns back into a small and cute puppy. When it's big, it takes up a lot of space, so Bella asked him to keep it small. Now Gabby realizes that this is truly a divine beast. But the previous saint constantly secluded herself in her estate until her death, since the temple caused her many problems. Isabella understands that this is about her ancestor Daphne, but she was always cheerful. There was even a saying that if you want to meet a saint, then attend the largest banquet. However, according to Gabby, Daphne was constantly sitting in her estate. He also says that there are many records preserved there, and Bella can go there. At the same time, he asks the girl to return home to protect her from the temple. After her brother's visit, Isabella decides to go for a walk with her maid. The girls notice that it is too noisy in the garden and decide to find out what is going on. Lately, everyone is in a frenzy because someone has broken all the statues of the gods in the garden. In fact, it was our heroine who did this by destroying the statues of the Archangel Isabella. But people decided that these were demons or some kind of revelation from above. Jesse even asks the lady not to hang around the temple and to be careful. Meanwhile, Isabella is only thinking about smashing the rest of the statues. After this, they enter the hall where the high priest delivers a sermon. However, Isabella is unbearably bored sitting at this event. Jesse admonishes the lady because she has yawned many times already. But Isabella can't help herself because of the high priest's boring voice and his unpleasant face. Whatever the case, she should be more mindful of her behavior. After all, everyone gathered here only because they wanted to see the saint. Now, Bella understands why the high priest begged her to attend this service. Suddenly, our heroine's boredom is interrupted by something strange. She notices a knight with silver hair who seems familiar to her. Jesse explains that it was this man who helped them deal with the robbers. She couldn't even imagine that he would turn out to be a holy knight. Bella remembers that incident and that nasty silver hair. And while Jesse is drooling over this man, our heroine is ready to spit with disgust. This service turned out to be not only boring, but also unpleasant. At this point, the high priest decides to move from preamble to action. And today, he decides to talk about the 5 heroes who saved the earth from the Demon King. After this, Isabella becomes interested in listening to this sermon. She decides to find out how much people have twisted the whole story. 500 years ago, the Demon King sent monsters to the Middle Kingdom. He was consumed by demonic energy and sent demons, even against their will, to destroy humanity. Then, by order of the Demon King, one of the lords arrived in the Middle Kingdom to assess the situation. It was Lady Bella, since she had the least influence on the human world. The heavenly god prophesied that the invasion of the demonic kingdom would stop, but such a fact is a lie. He could not take active action because this would require killing the demonic god. And the heavenly god would never in his life give the order to kill his only surviving brother. After this, the high priest begins to list the names of the 5 heroes. One of them was Zachary Martinet, whom our heroine already knows very well. Isabella recalls the events that preceded their meeting. Then she just arrived in the Middle Kingdom and noticed the man. Isabella decided to come closer, to take a closer look at the young man. He sat near the temple building and leaned heavily on his sword. The young man felt someone looking at him from behind his back. After that, he turned towards Isabella, and blood from the wounds was oozing down his body. If they hadn't met then, their destinies could have turned out differently. At that time, the expedition of heroes was led by Lord Zachary and the son of Duke Martinet. And everyone knows the story of the Archangel Isabella, who descended to protect the young man. No matter how you look at it, such a lie makes our heroine want to vomit. Contact with that guy was nothing more than a passing whim for her. He forced the villagers to hide in the chapel, and afterwards he was barely able to stand on his feet with the help of a sword, and was completely wounded. Isabella saw that he had no chance of winning, but she noticed his abilities. It seemed to her that with such persistence, he might even survive. And Zachary then just silently looked at the girl who appeared out of nowhere. Isabella decided to come closer to the young man to take a closer look at him. He had silver hair, dyed red with the blood of monsters. For a moment, it even seemed to her that their hair color was similar to hers. After this, Isabella offered the young man a contract. However, despite his dire situation, Zachary refused. As evening approached, the young man lit a fire near the chapel with people. He began to bandage his wounds and repeated once again that he refused. However, Isabella doesn't understand why Zachary doesn't want to sign the contract. After all, she can give him all the riches and glory of this world. There is not a single person around who would help the young man. And Zachary explains that he is here of his own free will, and that this is his value. The people inside the chapel are simply protecting what is valuable to them. For some, it is family and children, and for others, it is simply their own life. Isabella meets for the first time a man who is willing to sacrifice himself for others. She is surprised to see such a noble soul before her. At first, it was just curiosity, but over time, Isabella's thirst for this soul grew stronger. Zachary continues to kill demonic creatures and protect people, but his strength was already running out, and he could barely stand on his feet. He even started coughing up blood. And then Isabella decided to try again. She reported that the young man was already addicted to demonic energy and would soon die, and if Zachary agrees to sign the contract, then Bella will be able to save him and the people in the chapel. Then, our heroine used everything she could to convince the young man. Zachary even called her a persistent demoness who will not back down from her goal. Having lost his strength, he falls on her and announces that he agrees to the contract. Isabella can't believe she finally got a positive answer. But what really infuriates her is that he only agreed before his death. However, Isabella is now forced to save people by sealing herself away. After all, she initially promised to save them and Zachary if he signed the contract. Lilith harshly scolded the girl for the fact that the contract lord had bound himself with the agreement. The sermon ends with this painful memory. Isabella shouldn't have listened to this, as it only lowered her spirits. Suddenly, someone calls Lady Bella, and she turns her head. The crown prince appears nearby, whom our heroine calls a half-breed. However, Isabella does not remember the young man being at the ceremony. The prince simply waited for the sermon to end, and was lucky that he didn't have to listen to all the nonsense. At this moment, several priests begin to follow our couple. And if the crown prince and Lady Bella even look at each other, it will be a problem. In the temple, the young man is not liked and, frankly speaking, is despised. This is all because of his dark hair color, which is different from the members of the imperial family. People believe that the silver color is proof of receiving the blessing of the archangel. To maintain religious authority, the temple insists that only a man with such hair become emperor. And naturally, they don't like the black-haired crown prince. And Isabella explains that she really likes the half-breed's hair color. She even calls this color beautiful and confuses the crown prince. It's just that compared to this silver locks, any other color is beautiful. At this moment, Isabella notices the crown prince's strange behavior. He turned completely red and tried not to show his embarrassment. The young man then says that in a normal situation, there would be no problem with hair color. But one of his half-brothers was born with flawless silver hair. Because of this, the temple is plotting to get rid of the crown prince. After this, Isabella learns that the knight with silver hair is the crown prince's brother. After all, there was only one person with such an appearance in the chapel. The crown prince asks to be careful with him, as he has powerful holy power and a keen spiritual sense. But Isabella asks not to worry about her, as she avoids the silver hair at a distance of 100 meters. After some time, our heroine tries to understand what the high priest wanted from her, but the priest just smiles with his nasty face and doesn't answer. He also brought with him the most problematic guy in the whole temple. This is the same Kaiden who serves as the commander of the holy knights in the temple. The high priest introduces the man and thinks that he and Isabella are meeting for the first time. Our heroine understands that she needs to act as if they don't know each other. Since childhood, Kaiden lived in a temple near the border and only recently returned to the capital. After this, the high priest asks whether the saint is satisfied with the priest serving her, and the girl explains that they need to show more sincerity. But in reality, the high priest wanted to inform Isabella that it was time for her to begin her duties as a saint. The girl thought that it was just an honorary title, and she wouldn't have to do anything. Although from time to time, Daphne said that the temple was overloaded with work. Since Isabella is not yet accustomed to the position of a saint, the high priest offers her to take on only one duty. To begin with, a girl can listen to the confessions of believers, or else offer prayers for them, which would be like a curse. As a result, the high priest offered the saint many options and became tired of them himself. And Isabella doesn't understand how Daphne managed to do all this and still attend banquets. After this, the priest announces that there is a final duty to destroy the demon worshippers, but he would never send a saint to such dangerous work. However, Isabella asks to tell her more about these people, and the high priest asks the girl not to worry, as the knights regularly carry out cleansing. Isabella finds it strange that the priest first interested her and now backs down. It is important for her to find out what the demon worshippers have done, that they are being cleansed. The priest explains that they must be punished only for worshipping dark forces. In fact, demon worship has declined significantly, and many sects have long since disappeared. For example, the contract lord from the demon realm is now the weakest and is no longer worshipped. Isabella is shocked by this news, since she is the lord of contracts. According to temple informants, the demon has not left his kingdom since his birth, and the weaker the dark personality, the less likely it is that it will leave the demon world. Of course, this is true, but the reason why Bella did not come to the human world is completely different. And since all the demon worshippers think that the contract lord is too weak, It's time to act. Isabella promises to destroy every single one of them and fulfill her duty as a saint. After such a fiery speech and fierce anger, the priest had nothing to say in response. And now Isabella doesn't know how to even take on this difficult task. She notices a carefree Jessie, who is calmly knitting and humming songs. Our heroine wonders if the maid knows anything about demon worshippers, but Jessie replies somewhat suspiciously that he knows nothing about bad people. Then the girl explains that recently one book has become popular among the maids. It has a very strange name, The Demon Duke is Possessed by Me. Jessie hands the book to the lady and advises her to read it in secret. In today's world, catchy headlines that can attract readers' attention are in fashion. Isabella opens the book and reports that there are problems with the contents. She begins to read a romantic passage in which a vampire bites his victim. There are many intimate details in these words, and Jessie cannot listen to such things. And Isabella explains that demons don't actually drink human blood. And yet she doesn't understand what this has to do with demon worshippers. And Jessie explains that in this book, the demon is portrayed in an attractive and romantic way. Any work in which a demon is depicted positively is considered forbidden in the temple. But lately there have been strong rumors about this book. People are convinced that it is spread by demon worshippers. Thanks to the book, more and more people started saying that they would like to date a demon. After this, Isabella decides to continue to consider the contents of the novel. Jessie thinks the lady liked the book and offers to bring her more. After some time, Isabella persistently argues with the high priest. But for the girl's safety, no one leaves her any other choice. The temple believes that the destruction of the statues was a warning to the saint. Of course, Isabella cannot admit that she herself destroyed them. However, now Caden with silver hair is assigned to be her guard. He is the commander of the Holy Knights and would be perfect for this role. After all, Isabella is the most valuable person in the temple, and her guard must be at least such a knight. The girl dug her own grave when she volunteered to destroy demon worshippers. At this moment, the high priest cannot take his eyes off the saint. He thinks that he and Caden look very good together. But doesn't the temple support the silver-haired one as the next emperor? If this is so, then why are they trying to connect the saint with him when she shows her disgust? Besides, even this guy is standing there with a completely blank look. Although if you look closely, his gaze is not so empty at all. Isabella continues to look at Caden, not noticing that he has noticed. The thing is that a knight does not have the same emotions that people have. That's why Isabella doesn't feel anything from him at the moment. How can a person feel nothing at all and walk around with a stone face? The people who are under Dantalion's control look exactly the same. Could it be that the Lord is somehow connected to this knight? And all this time, the high priest thinks that Isabella is looking at Caden out of sympathy. But she denies his assumption and agrees to accompany him. Isabella only asks that the young man not get under her feet and not bother her. However, Caden begins to control the girl's every step. Isabella is terribly annoyed by the fact that he follows her everywhere. She asks the guy not to accompany her to the temple, as it is safe here. But Caden explains that the high priest ordered him to follow the saint everywhere. And he, as a knight, is obliged to carry out all the orders he receives. If Isabella goes into her room, the guy will guard her door. The girl calls Caden terribly unpleasant, and he apologizes for it. Isabella is terribly annoyed by the fact that this knight cannot be reached. She recalls that the crown prince promised to help her in any situation. It seems that the moment has come when this can be taken advantage of. Isabella asks Caden not to follow her, as she needs to meet with a half-wit. And when the girl pronounces the name of the crown prince, the knight's face changes. Even though it was the imperial palace, he still could not be sure of the saint's safety. However, does the word half-moron mean an affectionate address to one's other half? Isabella couldn't even imagine that Caden would come up with something like this. She says that even if this is true, it is no one's business. However, Caden is obliged to report such a close relationship with the saint to the high priest. He ordered that he be informed of everything that happened between Isabella and the crown prince. And the girl explains that the knight has no pride at all, because he speaks like a servant. Caden explains that the high priest showed him the path to follow. At this point, Isabella is completely speechless from such nonsense, and the knight continues to talk about how it is right to always follow the words of the high priest. Now the girl understands that he is not insensitive, but diligent. Is he one of those people who blindly follow the words of others, without having his own opinion? After this, Isabella explains that she is not the prince's lover, and there is no need to report this. The girl leaves, and Caden stares after her persistently. Then, his attention is drawn to the saint's long blonde hair. But suddenly, they turn red and emit dark energy. Kaiden feels a pain in his chest and clutches the area. He doesn't understand what happened and where he gets such strange sensations from. Evening comes, and Isabella finds herself in the possession of the imperial palace. As always, the girl cannot remain without delicious desserts. She eats sweets with pleasure and forgets about all her problems. The crown prince understands that Lady Bella's mood is lifted by food. At first, she came to him incredibly angry, but now she has calmed down. The young man already knows that the temple has appointed Kaiden as her escort, and Isabella asks the prince to rid her of the knight, as she is already tired of him. She even threatens that if the young man does not deal with his brother, he will disappear from this world. According to the prince, people do not always value their blood ties. For example, if he didn't have a brother, there would have been half as many attempts on his life. And if Bella is really so tired of him, then the prince doesn't mind her getting rid of him. Although the young man himself asked the girl to avoid Kaiden, he still feels that there is another reason behind her hostility. Isabella admits that it's not about him stalking her. It turns out this guy looks an awful lot like the first Emperor Zachary. The crown prince didn't even think that the resemblance was so strong that Bella mentioned it. The young man thinks about it and finds this coincidence very strange. And Bella thinks that there is nothing unusual in the similarity between two blood relatives. However, the girl does not know that the current family came from a collateral branch. That is, they are not direct descendants of the first emperor. Zachary left no heirs, and the throne was inherited by a silver-haired aristocrat. Most people know this, and the crown prince didn't even think that Bella might not know. This news makes the girl think that Zachary never had a wife. The prince confirms this, but adds one important detail. The thing is that Bella's contractor committed suicide after ascending the throne. But Isabella has never heard this story and is very surprised.